Shabbat Shalom, everybody. Welcome to Double Portion Inheritance Ministries. I'm Maria Merola Wold. Today's date is September the 23rd, 2023, and we are going to be teaching on, are we commanded to fast on Yom Kippur? So before we get started, let's go ahead and say a quick prayer. We just lift you up, Father. We ask you in the name of Yahushua HaMashiach to pour out your Ruach HaKodesh upon us. Fill us to overflowing. We ask you to wash us clean in the blood of the Lamb. We thank you that we can come boldly before your throne of grace to find mercy and help in time of need. Father, I just pray that every person listening today, if they have needs, physical needs, if they need healing in their bodies, that you would touch their bodies and that you would heal them of every sickness and every disease and every ailment. Father, if they have financial needs, I ask that you provide for those financial needs. If they're in need of a job, I ask you to provide that job. If they're in need of a loved one to come to faith in Messiah, Yahushua, I pray that you save their family members and that you bring them into the household of faith. Father, if there's marriages that need saving, we ask you to save those marriages. Father, every prayer request that they may have, I pray that everyone listening who has a prayer request, that you would hear their prayers, that you would answer every prayer in the name of Yahushua. You said, if you ask anything in my name, I will do it. And so we stand on that. John 14:13. You said, if you ask the Father anything in my name, I will do it. And we trust you, Yahushua HaMashiach. We believe that you will answer us. Hallelujah. Are we commanded to fast on Yom Kippur? Well, to answer the question about whether or not we should fast on Yom Kippur, we must go back to the beginning, where the first Day of Atonement took place. And that's in Bereshit, Genesis 3:21. Unto Adam also and to his wife did Yahweh Elohim make coats of skins and clothed them. Now, I know it doesn't say in the English Bible, in the English translation, that this was Yom Kippur. But when you look at the meaning of Yom Kippur, you're going to say, wow, that really was the first day of covering. That really was the first Day of Atonement in history. You see, the Hebrew word coats in this passage is number H3801, ketonet, meaning to cover a garment or a robe. In Leviticus 23:27, we are commanded to have a Day of Atonement, Yom Kippur. The Hebrew word for atonement, kippur, is number H3725. The very next verse is interesting because it uses two different words for the English word atonement. So in Wayikra, Leviticus 23:28, it says, and you shall do no work in that same day, for it is a day of atonement. And that word is kippur. But then it says to make an atonement. And the second atonement is kafar. It's a different Hebrew word. To make an atonement, it's a day of atonement, kippur, to make an atonement, kafar, for you before Yahweh, your Elohim. So the first word atonement that is used in this passage is the word kippur, and the second time it uses the word kafar. Well, kippur or kippurim, which is plural, it's the plural word for kafar. You see, kafar is the singular. It means to cover. Well, see, this was the first time in history that somebody's sin was covered. Thus, the first mention of someone being covered after they had sinned was in Genesis 3:21, where we are shown that Adam and Hawa, in modern Hebrew they say Hava, but we don't believe there was ever a V sound in ancient Hebrew. In fact, even the Jewish Encyclopedia, which I'll take you there, admits that it was a wa. It was a Hebrew letter wa, not a vav. It became the vav sound after the Jewish people, the Yahudim, went into European nations, and they picked up the V sound from the Romans. You know, the letter V is the Roman numeral 5. So that's where it comes from. But it's always been a W sound. And I know people make fun of me because I use the W in the name of Yahweh, but there's a reason for that. The U and the W together form what's called a diphthong. That's an English grammar rule. So to get that breathy Yahweh, you know, the Hua sound in the middle of Yahweh, that's what the English grammar rule requires, is that you use the U and the W together to form the diphthong of Yahweh. Now, I see lots of people spelling it without the W, and that's fine, but according to English grammar rules, without the W, it's Yahuwah. And we know his name is not Yahuwah, it's Yahweh. So that's why you see me spelling it with a W. And, you know, people make fun, but I don't care. So the first mention of someone being covered is when Adam and Hawa, and, you know, I pronounce her name as Hawa. I know it sounds crazy, but that is how it would have been pronounced in ancient times. In modern Hebrew, they say Hava. So Adam and Hawa, or Eve, were clothed. They were covered. Yahweh obviously shed the blood of a lamb and made coats of skins for them. Now, I know what many of you are thinking. You are saying, Maria, where does it say that Yahweh slaughtered a lamb to make coats of skins for them? It doesn't say that a lamb was slaughtered. But some people purport that Adam and Eve did not have skin on them until after the fall. I've heard this type of teaching before, and it's rooted in Gnosticism. They say that they were simply disembodied spirits, like an aura of light. They say that after the fall, they were made flesh and blood. But you see, beloved, this belief is rooted in mysticism and Kabbalah and Gnosticism. It is not supported by Scripture. Those who purport that Adam and Eve were not flesh and blood until after the fall did not bother to read the previous chapter in Genesis chapter 2, where man was created from the dust of the earth. Well, guess what? The Hebrew word for dust, afar, means dirt or clay. Before the fall, Adam and Eve were made of flesh and blood, as we read in Genesis 2:23. The Hebrew word for flesh is bashar, which means flesh or skin. So the people that make up this stuff don't really do a thorough research in the Scriptures. You see, modern science has proven that human flesh contains the same mineral content as soil, thus confirming that we truly are made from dirt. In fact, I'm going to go to this website really quick for you, and it shows 10 ways nutrients are similar to human nutrients. And I'm not going to, belabor this too much. I just want to show it to you. A full list of essential nutrients that both humans and plants need, including manganese, magnesium, molybdenum, iron, copper, carbon, nitrogen, oxygen, hydrogen, phosphorus, sulfur, and chlorine. These are the same minerals that are found in soil that are also in humans, in human flesh. Okay, Bereshit 2:7 says, and Yahweh Elohim formed man of the dust. And that word is the Hebrew afar, which means earth or clay, of the ground, and breathed into his nostrils the breath of life, and man became a living soul. In other words, nephesh. And then in Bereshit, Genesis 2:23, and Adam said, this is now bone of my bones and flesh of my flesh. There you go. So those people that say that Adam and Eve didn't have flesh until after the fall, Genesis 2:23 proves this theory completely wrong. Okay, because Adam said that Eve or Hawa was flesh of his flesh, bashar. The word flesh there is the Hebrew word bashar, body, person, flesh, skin. She shall be called woman. Another reason why we can be sure that an animal was slaughtered to make the coats of skins for Adam and Eve is because of what it says in the book of Hebrews. Hebrews 9:22 says that almost all things are by the Torah, the law, purged with blood, and without shedding of blood is no remission. This means that the first atonement for sins took place after Adam and Eve ate of the tree of knowledge of good and evil. If there had not been atonement made for them, they could not have qualified to be the ancestors of our Messiah, according to the genealogical record in Luke 3:23 through 38. You see, there are hints in the story of Genesis 3:7 through 21, where we are shown a prophetic shadow picture of Messiah as the ultimate atonement for sins. So stay with me. You are going to see a clear contrast between the pride of humanity versus the humility of our Messiah. In Genesis 3:7, we are told that Adam and Hawa, or Eve, sewed fig leaves together to cover themselves. And right here in Bereshit, Genesis 3:7, it says, and the eyes of them were both opened, and they knew that they were naked, and they sewed fig leaves together and made themselves aprons. So obviously, Yahweh did not accept vegetation as a proper covering for sin. Adam and Eve were trying to hide their sin rather than to confess their sin. In Proverbs 28:13, it says, he that covers his sins shall not prosper, but whoso confesses and forsakes them shall have mercy. See, when we try to cover our own sin in an artificial way, we are not going to be forgiven. The only thing that can cover our sin is when we confess our sins to Elohim, and he covers us with the blood of the Lamb. That would be the blood of Messiah, Yahushua. So before Yahweh covered their sin with the animal skins, he wanted them to first recognize their nakedness. He wanted them to be spiritually naked. In other words, fully exposed, so that they could see the depravity of their own fallen nature. And in Hebrews 4:13, it says, neither is there any creature that is not manifest in his sight, but all things are naked and opened unto the eyes of him with whom we have to do. What this means is that when we go before Yahweh and we confess our sins before him, he sees everything. And that we are naked in his sight. Not talking about physical nakedness. We're talking about that we let him see us in all of our sinfulness. And what does he do? He covers us with the blood of Yahushua. All he wants from us is to be open and honest about our own sin. He doesn't want excuses. He doesn't want blame shifting. He doesn't want us to pretend that we didn't sin, or to lie, or to try to cover ourselves with fig leaves. Adam and Eve were trying to cover themselves physically, but that was like putting the cart before the horse. You see, Yahweh was after something else that could not be attained by covering the exterior. He wanted them to have a broken and contrite heart. In Tehillim, Psalm 51:17, the sacrifices, that word sacrifices is zebach. The sacrifices of Elohim are a broken spirit, a broken and contrite heart. O Elohim, you will not despise. And then this also reminds me of in Metatyahu, Matthew 23:25, when our Messiah said the following words to the religious leaders of his day. He said, woe unto you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites, for you make clean the outside of the cup and of the platter, but within they are full of extortion and excess. He said it was only after Yahweh allowed them to be naked and exposed. In other words, Adam and Eve. After he allowed them to be naked and exposed, thereby causing them to be humbled, that he finally covered their nakedness with animal skins. See, he wants us to be honest about our own sinfulness. In Genesis, Bereshit 3:21, unto Adam also and to his wife did Yahweh Elohim make coats of skins. The Hebrew word for skins here is H5785, and it's the word or, which means skin, hide, leather. However, the root word is ur, meaning to be bare, to be made naked. What this means is that Yah had to use the skins of other naked creatures to cover Adam and Eve with. In other words, an animal became their substitute for sins until the seed should come. That's in Galatians 3:19. In Genesis 4:3, Cain brought forth the fruit of the ground, vegetation, as an offering unto Yahweh. In Genesis 4:4, Abel brought the firstling of his own flock. The Hebrew word firstling is number H1062, Bekora, which means birthright. In other words, only by the blood of a lamb are we counted worthy to be born again into our birthright, our inheritance. The Hebrew word for flock is number H6629, son, which means a goat or a lamb. Okay? Now, what are we seeing here? We are seeing that Abel, brought forth the only thing that it could account him worthy to be called the firstborn. See, Abel was the second-born son. But he knew, he had wisdom, and he understood that what was required was the blood of a lamb. What was it that gave Israel the right to be called my firstborn? You see in Shemot, Exodus 4:22, Yahweh said to Pharaoh, thus says Yahweh, Israel is my firstborn. And then in Shemot or Exodus 12:5, it says, your lamb shall be without blemish, a male of the first year. You shall take it out from the sheep or from the goats. What are we seeing here? Cain was the firstborn, just like Esau. And Abel was the secondborn, just like Jacob. And yet, Esau, being physically the firstborn, did not inherit the promise. Jacob, being the secondborn, inherited the promise because he was zealous for what Yahweh had to offer. He valued it, whereas Esau did not. And the same thing was true of Cain. He only offered vegetation, which is not an acceptable offering to cover sin. Why? Because cultivating crops is something that one does with the works of his own hands. Now, don't get me wrong. We are required to do good works, but when we do good works as a means to atoning for our own sins, that's putting your trust in your own works, and our own works can never atone for sin. In other words, it is easy to take pride in your own work and thus begin to believe that you are righteous on your own. However, a shepherd, which is what Abel was, had to learn relationship with his sheep in order to properly bring them up. You see, Cain was filled with pride, and he thought that his own works had value apart from Yahweh. Conversely, Abel was humble, and he was willing to give the best of his flocks to make an acceptable offering before Yahweh. In other words, Abel valued relationship, whereas Cain valued his own accomplishments, which is rooted in pride. It was only after Adam and Eve were put on trial that they had to come face to face with Yahuwah and acknowledge their sin. And once they recognized their sin, Yahuwah made coats of skins for them. You see, even the Jewish people nicknamed the Day of Atonement, they gave it a nickname called face to face. Now, why do they refer to Yom Kippur as face to face? Well, there are several different prophetic shadow pictures in this nickname. They nicknamed it face to face because once per year, the high priest had to go behind the veil. And when he went behind that veil, he came face to face with Yahuwah, the Creator. He was exposed. He was exposed to such a degree that he could die in his presence behind that veil. And that is why the high priest, it was so important for the high priest to first make atonement for himself with the blood of a heifer. He had to kill a bullock or a heifer for himself before he could be counted worthy to go behind that veil and atone for the rest of the nation. So this is the reason why Yom Kippur is nicknamed face to face. But there's another reason. You see, Adam and Eve came face to face with Yahuwah. At first, they tried to blame each other. Adam tried to blame his wife. He said, the woman you gave me. He's blaming Yahuwah and saying, the woman you gave me, acting as if Yahuwah made a mistake by giving him the woman. The woman you gave me told me to eat the fruit, and I ate it. Okay. And then a woman is like blaming the serpent and saying, but the serpent beguiled me and I did eat. So they're both playing the blame game. It wasn't until they came face to face with the reality of their nakedness. See, Yahuwah wanted them to see their nakedness. He wanted them to recognize that without him, we are all naked. We are all put to shame. And the only one who can cover the nakedness of our sins is Yahuwah and his blood sacrifice. However, in the future, this title, face to face, which is a nickname for Yom Kippur, it will have an even better and greater meaning because there's going to come a day when the kingdom of Judah, those that did not accept Yahushua as the Messiah yet, many of them, Scripture tells us, many of them are going to accept Yahushua on that day when he lands his feet on the Mount of Olives. And we are told, they shall look upon me whom they have pierced, and they shall mourn for him as one mourns for his only son. And so that is the day that the kingdom of Judah, they are going to come face to face. And I love this painting right here. I was looking for the one, larger one that I have of this. So they're going to come face to face with Yahuwah. And when they come face to face with him, they are going to be broken. It says they will mourn for him as one mourns for his only son. So did you ever wonder why in a wedding, an ancient Hebrew wedding, the bride comes face to face with the groom and she's veiled? He can't see her face until he lifts the veil from her face. And finally, she sees him face to face, and he sees her face to face. And there's no more hiding behind a veil. So you see, this title, face to face, which is a nickname that the Jewish people use for Yom Kippur, has so much prophetic richness to it. If only we would recognize all the different levels and all the different layers that are involved in Yom Kippur. Many things in Scripture are like an onion. You peel back a layer and then there's another layer. And then you peel back another layer and there's yet another layer. It's like there's no end to all the prophetic shadow pictures that Yahuwah paints of his love and mercy and kindness towards his bride. And it's all throughout the Scriptures. All throughout the Scriptures, we see Yom Kippur typology over and over and over again. It's interwoven. It's interlaced into the fabric of Scripture. So you see, Yom Kippur literally means day of covering. Day of covering. Yahuwah himself manifested as the high priest, Melchizedek. Who do you think it was that walked in the garden among them? You see, Scripture tells us no man has seen the Father at any time. No man has seen him at any time, but the only begotten Son, he has declared him. And we are told that Yahushua is the visible image of the invisible Elohim. So who do you think walked in the garden among them? It couldn't have been just the Father. I mean, the Father and the Son are truly the same being. I know people don't like it when I say that. They think, that it just sounds crazy, but Yahuwah can be in every dimension of time at once. He can exist in the past, he can exist in the present, and he can exist in the future. He can exist in all time continuums at once because he is outside of linear time. He is the one who is and who was and who is to come. You think he's limited to time and space like we are? You think he's a finite being? No, he's infinite. He's eternal. He exists outside of this linear time continuum. So that means that he is the Father and he is the Son at the same time. And he could be on the throne as the Father. And he could be down here on earth as the Son at the same time. And when I say that, people laugh and they mock and they say, oh, but wait a minute. You mean to tell me he was praying to himself? Ha, ha, ha. And I see people, posting these memes on Facebook where they say, oh, Father, I'm praying to me. I mean you. And, and they poke and they make fun and they think it's funny. And it's not funny because you know what? It's true that Yahushua does actually pray to himself. And don't laugh about this because I'm going to prove it to you. People always say to me, was Messiah praying to himself? My answer is actually yes. Here's proof. Romans 8:26 says, the Spirit, the Ruach, also helps our infirmities. That word infirmities means weaknesses. For we know not what we should pray for as we ought, but the Ruach, the Spirit itself, makes intercession for us with groanings which cannot be uttered. And it goes on and it says, for he makes intercession for the Kadushim, the saints, according to the will of Elohim. You see, the Spirit of Yahuwah that's in us prays to the Spirit of Yahuwah in heaven. In other words, the Spirit of Yahuwah that was in our Messiah was praying to the Spirit of Yahuwah that was on the throne in heaven. And you can laugh and poke fun and mock, but someday you're going to be judged for that mocking spirit, because what does our Messiah tell us right here in John 8:24 and Yehukanan? What does he say? He says right here, he says, I said, therefore, unto you that you shall die in your sins. For if you believe not that I am. And see, the word he's not even there. It's italicized. The King James translators added the word he. If you believe not that I am, you shall die in your sins. In other words, if you do not believe that Yahushua HaMashiach is the same I am who met with Moses at the burning bush, if you do not believe that, if you do not believe that the Father and the Son are truly one being, one entity, he said, you shall die in your sins. This is a salvation issue. Now, I'm not teaching Trinitarianism. Actually, quite the contrary. So I'll get to that in a minute. John 8:58, Yahushua said, verily, verily, I say unto you, before Abraham was, I am. I am. Okay? So, yes, he was praying to himself. And you might think that's funny, but it's not. It's the absolute truth. Okay? Now, I want to show you another image here. Well, I guess I can't find the one about the challah bread. I was looking for it. See if I can find the challah bread. There it is. So I created this graphic a few weeks ago. And you know what we have throughout the scriptures is we see the Father and we see the Son and we see the Ruach HaKodesh, the Holy Spirit. And one day as I was, pondering this, Yahuwah shows me this mental picture of a loaf of challah bread. And he says, isn't that exactly the way the Father and the Son are interwoven with each other? Because this is what he says in John 14, 10 through 11. He says, I am in the Father and the Father is in me. They are inside of each other. They are intertwined. They are woven together like a piece of fabric. You cannot separate the Father from the Son. Even though he was down here on earth in this finite world, in this corruptible body that was going to die for us on the cross, he was on the throne in heaven in a different time dimension, in a different eternal world at the same time. So when you see a loaf of challah bread from now on, the Jewish people make challah bread. They say that they're making it braided because they're folding their arms to rest for Shabbat. Well, that's a nice sentiment, but I see the loaf of challah bread, and what I see is that the eternal Father, Yahuwah, manifesting himself in three different ways: Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. Not a trinity, not three separate persons, one person manifesting in three different ways. Just like I'm a mother, but I'm also a wife and I'm a daughter. I can be all those things at the same time. I don't have to become three separate people. I can exist as all three at the same time. If I can exist as all three at the same time, why can't the eternal Creator exist in all three roles at the same time? Why do we put him in a box? Why do we limit him? Okay. The other thing I want to show you is this Trinity. Okay. Because the Trinity is not biblical. The word Trinity is not even in the scriptures. Okay. But that's not okay, here it is. Here's what I wanted to show you. So here we have the Roman Catholic Trinity. And as you can see, the Catholic Church teaches that there are three bodily images on the throne. You got the young man, which is the Son, whom they call Jesus. You got the old man, which is the Father. And then you've got Mary on the throne. They call her the Queen of Heaven. They say that the Holy Spirit can only operate through her. They call Mary the Queen of Heaven. They call her the Holy Spirit. And if you don't believe me, I'll show you the Time magazine article where Pope John Paul II actually declared that Mary is the Queen of Heaven, that Mary is the Holy Spirit. Okay? This, beloved, comes from ancient mystery Babylon religion. This was originally supposed to be, the Queen of Heaven, Semiramis, and the Father was supposed to be Nimrod, and the Son was supposed to be Tammuz. And of course, this ancient mythology got carried out in other nations under different names after the Tower of Babel. In Egypt, she was Isis, Queen of Heaven, and the father was called, Osiris, and then the son was called Horus. But this same mythology has just carried on in different cultures. Now, this right here is what they teach in seminaries, Christian seminaries. And this is called the Scutum Fidei. It's a Latin word that means the shield of faith. This is the statement of faith about the Trinity. And here's what it declares. The Father is not the Son is not the Spirit is not the Father. See, this is the Trinity says they're not one. But then it says the Son is God, the Spirit is God, the Father is God. Isn't that a contradiction? Because in one breath, they're saying the Father and the Son and the Spirit are not the same being, but all three of them are God. So what does that tell you? Three gods. Three. That's polytheism. That's polytheism. We are strictly forbidden from worshiping any other Elohim but Yahuwah. In the Ten Commandments, He says, I am Yahweh, your Elohim, that brought you out of Mitzrayim, that brought you out of Egypt. You shall have no other Elohim before me. And when he says before me, he doesn't mean ahead of me. He means in front of my face. I don't want to even see these other false deities. Get them away from me. I want these false pagan deities out of my face. Okay? Now, what does the oneness of Yahweh look like in Scripture? You see, Messiah Yahushua is the visible image. He is the image and likeness of the invisible Elohim, Yahuwah. And in Revelation 4, we are told that there's only one seated on the throne. And, people always say, but wait a minute, I thought he was seated at the right hand of the Father. Yes, he is seated at the right hand of power. Scripture says he is seated at the right hand of power, but it also says he's in the bosom of the Father. So wait a minute, how's he in the bosom of the Father and also seated at the right hand of the Father? That seems kind of contradictory. I mean, he would have to do some gymnastics and contort his body to be seated at the right hand of the Father and also be in the bosom of the Father all at the same time. You see, these are Hebrew idioms. You've heard people say somebody owns a business and their business partner, he says, my business partner is my right hand man. Well, that's what it means to be seated at the right hand of power, because Yahushua, the Messiah, is the right hand. We've heard in Isaiah 53 where it says, to whom has the arm of Yahweh been revealed? To whom has the arm of Yahweh been revealed? You see, the Father's invisible. We can't see him, but the Son is his arm, is his right hand. Okay? So we're never going to see more than one image on the throne. When we get to heaven and we stand before the throne, we're only going to see one seated on the throne. And yes, we will see an image of a lamb, because the lamb represents what he did for us in eternity past. But we're always going to just see one image on the throne. Okay. Now, I went down that rabbit trail because I want you to understand that when I say the one who walked among Adam and Eve in the garden had to be the pre-incarnate Messiah Yahushua, who is also the Father. The Father with a visible image on him. Okay? So Yahweh walked in the garden among Adam and Eve. This means that Yahushua had a visible form, an eternal existence before he came to earth in a mortal body. His name is Melchizedek. Show it to you right here in Hebrews chapter 7. Hebrews 7. It says, for this Melchizedek. Now, means king. Zedek means righteous. For this Melchizedek, king of Shalem, that's an ancient name for Jerusalem, priest of the Most High Elohim, who met Abraham returning from the slaughter of the kings and blessed him, to whom also Abraham gave a 10th part of all, first being by interpretation king of righteousness, and after that also king of Shalem, which is king of peace. Without father, without mother, without descent, having neither beginning of days nor end of life, but made like unto the Son of Elohim, abides a priest continually. Now, made like means that he's always existed, but Scripture tells us he made a body for himself. Scripture tells us, thou hast prepared me a body. You see, he made a body for himself, a human body that was going to die for the sins of humanity. So he had a pre-incarnate existence as Melchizedek, which means that if he has no father and he has no mother, what else can you make of him but that he is the Father that put on human flesh and chose to become the Son? And we see that also in Isaiah 9:6. Yeshayahu. It tells us, For unto us a child is born, unto us a son is given, and the government shall be upon his shoulder, and his name shall be called Wonderful Counselor, the Mighty El, the Everlasting Father, the Prince of Peace. That is Sar Shalom in Hebrew. There you have it. The Son that was born to us, that was given, is also the everlasting Father. Okay? Now, I just had to bring this out because you're not going to fully understand what happened on Yom Kippur, that first Yom Kippur in the Garden of Eden, until you recognize who it was that covered them. It was Messiah Yahushua, Melchizedek. He is ever interceding. He has been interceding for us since the beginning of time. That means forever and ever and ever. It tells us this right here in Psalm 110. I'm sorry, just get choked up when I start talking about this because it's so amazing that he is ever interceding for us. Psalm 110. A psalm of David. Yahuwah said unto my Adon. And that word is Adon. Okay. So David is talking about the eternal one, Yahuwah. But then he talks about, the word Lord in lowercase letters. That word in Hebrew is Adon. He's talking about Messiah, Yahushua, who manifested in the flesh. It says, Yahuwah said unto my Adon, sit you at my right hand until I make your enemies your footstool. Yahuwah shall send the rod of your strength out of Zion, rule you in the midst of your enemies. Your people shall be willing in the day of your power, in the beauties of holiness. From the womb of the morning, you have the dew of your youth. Yahuwah has sworn and will not repent. You are a priest forever after the order of Melchizedek. And right here, this word is Adonai. Adonai at your right hand shall strike through kings in the day of his wrath. You see, he's coming back on a white horse, and it's going to be on Yom Kippur, and it's going to be a day of vengeance and a day of wrath. And it says he shall judge among the heathen. He shall fill the places with dead bodies. He shall wound the heads over many countries. There's Genesis 3:15 right there. It says that he's going to crush the head of the serpent, the head of the dragon. He's going to wound the heads over many countries. He shall drink of the brook in the way. Therefore shall he lift up the head. Now, what is that talking about? I believe this is an allusion to Gideon's army. You see, Gideon had a very small army of 300 men, and Yahuwah had him whittle it down to an even smaller number. He said, have all your men go by the brook and start drinking and lapping up water. And those who don't lift up their heads, they're not alert. An enemy is going to come and attack them, and they're not going to be ready for the attack because they're so busy lapping up the water, they're not going to be paying attention. He says, I want you to keep the men who are alert and keep their heads lifted up. So, in other words, I mean, this is poetic language that is being used here, but the day of battle is coming soon, and it's going to be on another Yom Kippur in the future. And the bride of Messiah is going to be the army, and we are going to be fighting with him. We'll get to that. Okay, so how can we know that it was the Son that was in the Garden of Eden and not just the Father? Well, really, they're the same being, okay? Because Yahuwah is both Father and Son at the same time. See, Yehukanan, John 1:18 tells us, no man has seen Elohim at any time. In Yehukanan, John 6:46, it tells us, no man has seen the Father save he which is of Elohim. That's talking about the Messiah. Therefore, Adam and Eve could only have seen the Father with his visible form, which the visible form is our Messiah, his visible image. Colossians 1:15 says that our Messiah is the image of the invisible Elohim. You see, it was our Messiah, Yahushua, as Melchizedek, who came down and walked among Adam and Eve. And it was he who performed the first Yom Kippur sacrifice to cover the nakedness of their sin. In Leviticus 16, the high priest is commanded to cast lots to see which of the twin goats would be killed and which one would be sent away. Immediately after Yahuwah killed a lamb and covered Adam and Hawa, or Eve, he had to send them away from the garden. See, Adam and Eve were like a prophetic shadow picture of the twin goats. He became the scapegoat for them. You see, the dictionary defines the word scapegoat as the innocent party that takes the place of the guilty party. So how does Adam and Eve represent the scapegoat? Well, the word scapegoat in Hebrew is Azazel. It literally means goat of departure. Now, of course, some people claim, because the book of Enoch claims that Azazel was the name of a demon. I don't believe the book of Enoch is inspired by the Ruach HaKodesh. I know people are going to get mad at me for saying that, but this was the biggest reason right here. The biggest reason I couldn't accept that the book of Enoch was legitimately inspired by the Ruach is because the Ruach HaKodesh revealed to me that Azazel represents our Messiah. Now, Ellen G. White from the Seventh-day Adventist claims that Azazel represents the devil. No, I do not believe that Azazel represents the devil. I believe our Messiah, Yahushua, played both roles of the scapegoat, the Yom Kippur scapegoat. Not only was he the sacrificial goat that dies for the sins of the people, but he was also the scapegoat. Because why? He's the innocent party that takes the blame for the guilty party. The devil's not innocent. He doesn't take the blame for the guilty party. No way. Okay? So immediately after Yahuwah killed a lamb and covered Adam and Eve, he had to send them away from the garden as a picture of the scapegoat. You see, with the two houses of Israel, you had some of them were in exile. They were sent away into exile. Throughout history, we've seen many times where the kingdom of Judah was sent into Babylonian captivity. The kingdom of Israel, they were sent into the Assyrian captivity. And then after the Roman siege, the kingdom of Judah once again was sent out into the nations. Many times throughout Scripture, Israel was sent into exile. They were divorced and they were kicked out of their land. But at other times, many of them were slaughtered. We saw it with the Maccabean revolt. Many of the Yehudim, the Jews, were slain in the Maccabean revolt. We saw throughout Scripture that there's been different times where sometimes they represent the scapegoat that gets sent away, and at other times they represent the sacrificial goat that gets killed. So what does Messiah do? He comes to earth and he plays the role of both goats. Why? For both houses of Israel. We're going to get into that, so stay tuned. So Adam and Eve were not innocent, for they had disobeyed Elohim when they ate of the forbidden fruit. However, the main culprit was the serpent. It was the serpent that beguiled, deceived Eve, and subsequently Eve convinced her husband Adam to eat the forbidden fruit as well. In Genesis 4:1, after Yahuwah had made atonement for Adam and Hawa, or Eve, they conceived and they bore two sons. Now, the names of these two sons are going to have prophetic typology having to do with Yom Kippur. You're going to see this, so stay with me. So the name Cain, that's how you say Cain in Hebrew, and then Abel, their names have prophetic meaning, which I'm going to get to. Now, why is it so important that Eve conceived after atonement was made for her? Because, see, in Numbers chapter 5, There's an ordinance called the law of jealousy for when a wife was suspected of having committed adultery on her husband, but there was no eyewitness. In such cases, a spirit of jealousy would be sent to her husband, and he would suspect his wife. He would then take her to the priest in the temple to perform this ordinance. This ordinance was a test to reveal if the wife had committed adultery or not. If the wife had not been defiled, she would be free from guilt, and she would be able to go home and conceive a child with her husband. Even though Eve was guilty of committing spiritual adultery, when she obeyed the serpent, that is. Now, I don't believe in that whole serpent seed doctrine where they claim Eve had sex with the serpent. No, that's bogus. That's completely bogus. That comes from Gnosticism. That comes from ancient, Jewish mysticism and Kabbalah. There's so many reasons why that narrative does not work. And I'll get into that more later. But you see, because atonement was made for Eve and she was cleansed, she was able to bear children. This was a sign from Yahuwah that her sins were covered. This also explains why the Apostle Shaul or Paul says in 1 Timothy 2:13, he says, for Adam was first formed and then Eve. So Adam is like the firstborn, okay? He's like the firstborn twin goat. And then it says, and Adam was not deceived, but the woman being deceived was in the transgression. And then in verse 15, he says, notwithstanding, she shall be saved in childbearing if they continue in faith and charity and holiness with sobriety. Well, this last statement that Paul makes in 1 Timothy 2:15 has befuddled me for such a long time. And I've just examined it and I've, prayed on it. And I finally realized that what Paul is telling us, he's telling us that Eve was saved in childbearing because of this law of jealousy ordinance in Numbers chapter 5. You see, if the woman was guilty of committing adultery, the scripture tells us that her belly would swell and her thigh would rot and she would be barren. Okay, so let me go there with you quickly. Go with me to Numbers chapter 5. I'm not going to read the whole thing. I'm just going to read a little excerpt of it. Okay, so a test for adultery. Numbers 5:11. And Yahuwah spoke unto Moshe, saying, speak unto the children of Israel, and say unto them, if any man's wife go aside and commit a trespass against him, and a man lie with her carnally, and it be hid from the eyes of her husband, and be kept close, and she be defiled, and there be no witness against her, neither she be taken with the manner. And what does that mean? That's in italicized, so I don't know what that means exactly with the manner. Sometimes King James can be a little awkward. And then verse 14 says, and the spirit of jealousy comes upon him, and he be jealous of his wife, and she be defiled. Or if the spirit of jealousy come upon him, and he be jealous of his wife, and she be not defiled. In other words, sometimes the spirit of jealousy can visit the man because she really is guilty, and sometimes it's just he's being overly, he's having this overly active imagination, and in his mind, he's falsely accusing his wife. Okay, so in verse 15, it says, then shall the man bring his wife unto the priest, and he shall bring her offering for her, the 10th part of an ephah of barley meal. He shall pour no oil upon it, and nor put frankincense thereon, for it is an offering of jealousy, an offering of memorial, bringing iniquity to remembrance. You see, this whole ordinance is to remind the whole nation of Israel what they did on Mount Sinai with the golden calf, okay? And the priest shall bring her near and set her before Yahweh. And the priest shall take holy water in an earthen vessel, and of the dust that is in the floor of the tabernacle, the priest shall take and put it in the water. Okay, what was Adam formed from? Dust, right? So the dust from the floor is to remind us that we come from dust. Okay, but the water, the holy water, represents our Messiah, who cleanses us, who washes us by the washing of water by the word. So the priest takes the holy water in an earthen vessel, and he mixes the dust in the floor of the tabernacle and puts it into the water. And the priest shall set the woman before Yahweh and uncover the woman's head and put the offering of memorial in her hands, which is the jealousy offering. And the priest shall have in his hand the bitter water that causes the curse. That causes the curse. Do you remember the waters at Marah? Do you remember when Israel in the wilderness were complaining that there was no water, and Moses became so angry? He was supposed to speak to the rock, but what did he do? He struck the rock, and out of the rock came water. Okay, but there was another instance where the waters were bitter and they couldn't drink the water because how bitter the waters were. But what did Moses do? He cast a tree into the bitter waters. And when he cast the tree into the bitter waters, the waters became sweet. You see, that tree represents our Messiah's sacrifice on the tree. When that tree was cast into the bitter waters were made sweet again. So this whole ordinance is meant to take us back to the first sin that was committed at Mount Sinai. And even before that, the sin that was committed in the garden. Okay, Numbers 5:19, and the priest shall charge her by an oath. Now it's important to understand this word oath is the Hebrew word sheba. Okay, sheba. Okay, has to do with the number 7. Okay, let me see, where was I at? Lost my place. Okay, it says, then shall the man bring, okay, I went too far here. Wait, let me find it. Charge her by an oath. There we go. Shabbat. Okay, so Shabbat is another root of Sheba. Shabbat means to seven oneself. That is to swear by repeating a declaration 7 times by an oath. You see, all the priests of the sons of Aaron were installed not by an oath. Okay, they were installed by Moses. They were like, the temporary priesthood that was there to do the ordinances until the seed should come, the seed being the Messiah. But he's the only priest that was installed by an oath, being Melchizedek. Okay, so the priest shall charge the woman by an oath. And right next to the word oath, what do we have? The Aleph and the Tav. There's a symbol of Messiah, the Aleph and the Tav. The priest shall charge her by an oath and say unto the woman, if no man have lain with you, and if you have not gone aside to uncleanness with another instead of your husband, be you free from this bitter water that causes the curse. But if you have gone aside to another instead of your husband, and if you be defiled, and some man have lain with you beside your husband, then the priest shall charge the woman with an oath of cursing, and the priest shall say unto the woman, Yahuwah make you a curse and an oath among your people, when Yahuwah does make your thigh to rot and your belly to swell. And this water that causes the curse shall go into your bowels to make your belly to swell and your thigh to rot. And the woman shall say, Amen and Amen. And the priest shall write these curses in a book, and he shall blot them out with the bitter water. And he shall cause the woman to drink the bitter water that causes the curse, and the water that causes the curse shall enter into her and become bitter. Then the priest shall take the jealousy offering out of the woman's hand and shall wave the offering before Yahweh and offer it upon the altar. And the priest shall take a handful of the offering, even the memorial thereof, and burn it upon the altar. And afterward she shall cause the woman to drink the water. And when he has made her to drink the water, Then it shall come to pass that if she be defiled and have done trespass against her husband, the water that causes the curse shall enter into her and become bitter, and her belly shall swell, and her thigh shall rot, and the woman shall be a curse among her people. And if the woman shall not be defiled, but be clean, then she shall be free, and she shall conceive seed. Okay, she shall conceive seed. So I wanted to bring this out because right after Yahweh makes atonement for Adam and Eve, she conceived and bore 2 sons. Now, granted, we know that Cain did something wicked. He slew his own brother, Abel. But that doesn't mean he's a serpent seed. That doesn't mean he's a Nephilim. Because, see, King David did the exact same thing. King David lusted after Bathsheba and killed her husband, made it look like an accident, made it look like he died in battle, but he had Uriah killed. What David did was no different than when Cain did. Now, are we going to say that David is a Nephilim just because David had a man killed? Of course not. Of course not. Now, stay with me on this, okay? So, the names of these 2 brothers, Cain and Abel, they tell a story of both houses of Israel. You see, the name Cain comes from this root word in Hebrew. It's number 7069, kana. It means to procure. It means to purchase. It means to provoke to jealousy, to purchase, to recover, to redeem. Now, where else have we heard this language of being provoked to jealousy? We learn about that in Romans 11, right? Do we not learn from the apostle Shaul that ancient Israel rejected their Messiah and they were cut out of the olive tree, and room was made in the olive tree for the wild branches, so that those that belong to the wild branches, the Gentile nations that hear the gospel and they are born again, they are going to provoke brother Judah, the older brother, to jealousy. So what do we have here? We have Cain, as a prophetic picture of the kingdom of Judah. Didn't the kingdom of Judah slew using King James language, it can get awkward here. Didn't he slay Cain just the way that Cain slayed his own brother? Didn't they slay their own Messiah? Right? Stay with me on this, okay? See, in Revelation 19, on the Day of Atonement, our Messiah will return on a white horse, and what's he going to do? He's going to redeem, he's going to purchase, and he's going to recover his bride. In other words, those from the kingdom of Judah that have not accepted him are going to accept him, at least 1/3 of the inhabitants of Jerusalem, according to Ezekiel 5, and according to Zechariah chapter 12 through 14. And they are going to stand at the Mount of Olives. They're going to be waiting for him. And it says they will look upon me whom they have pierced. And they will mourn for him as one mourns for his only son. So, yes, what Cain did was thoroughly wicked. But just because he had killed his brother does not mean he's a Nephilim. You see, Cain is a picture of the kingdom of Judah. And Abel, is a picture of the house of Ephraim. So stay with me. You're going to see more. Okay. So in Romans 11:11, we are told that the house of Judah fell from grace. Of course, Paul he just says Jews. He uses the word Jews, right? The house of Yehuda fell from grace and caused salvation to come to the Gentiles, the Goyim. In other words, the house of Ephraim. In order to do what? To provoke Judah to jealousy. So Romans 11:11, he says, I say then, have they stumbled that they should fall? Elohim forbid, but rather through their fall, salvation is come unto the Goyim, the Gentiles, for to provoke them to jealousy. See, Cain, his name means to provoke to jealousy. Kana. Interesting, isn't it? there's more, so just stay with me. See, Cain represents the house of Judah, because they killed their own Messiah. They shouted, crucify him. Now, the name Abel means the following, okay? Emptiness or vanity. Figuratively, something transitory, unsatisfactory. Vanity, vain. Now, wait a minute. This may seem strange. Abel was righteous, and yet his name means emptiness, vanity, something transitory. See, Adam and Eve ended up losing both sons. Abel died, and Cain was sent away. Thus, they were left empty. Both sons gone. One was killed like the scapegoat, the sacrificial goat on Yom Kippur, and the other is sent away like the scapegoat. Adam and Eve had to bear the bitter pill, the bitter waters that they drank was, the consequences of their sin, even though Yahweh made coats of skins for them, even though he atoned for them, there was consequences that followed them. Okay, those consequences was the bitterness of losing both sons. Abel's life had ended before he could bear children, and thus his life ended in vain. Okay, these two brothers are a prophetic shadow picture of both houses of Israel. And throughout history, we have seen that these two houses have traded places with each other. You see, this explains why Jacob, when he crossed his arms over, he gave the blessing of the firstborn to the younger grandson, Ephraim, but he gave the blessing of the secondborn to his grandson, Manasseh. In fact, because of the grievous sins that Reuben and Simeon had committed, Jacob gave the blessing that was meant for Reuben to Ephraim. And he gave the blessing that was intended for Shimon, to Manasseh. Okay? What is interesting is that the name Reuben means to see a son. It actually means, look, a son. Okay? Because when Leah gave birth to Reuben, she felt, unloved. She knew she wasn't loved. She knew that Jacob loved her sister, her baby sister, Rachel. And so she said, Yahuwah has blessed me with a son. Look, Yahuwah has seen my affliction. He has seen my affliction. And she names him Reuben, which means, look, a son. Okay. But Shimon, his name means to hear. Well, repeatedly, Israel had been rebuked by the prophet Yeshayahu, Isaiah. They were also rebuked by our Messiah for their spiritual blindness and their spiritual deafness. How many times was it said of them, seeing you do not see, and hearing you do not hear? You see, since they rejected their Messiah, the spiritual gift of eyes to see and ears to hear was taken away from the original sons of Israel, Reuben and Simeon. Okay, the gift of eyes to see and ears to hear was taken from them and given to Joseph's two sons, who would end up being scattered to the heathen nations. However, in these latter days, they are being gathered back to their own land, and they shall be grafted back into their own olive tree once again. Bereshit, Genesis 48:5. And now your two sons, Ephraim and Manasseh, which were born unto you in the land of Mitzrayim or Egypt, before I came unto you into Mitzrayim or Egypt, are mine, as Reuben and Simeon are mine. So this is Jacob talking to his son Joseph, and he's saying to Joseph, your two sons, I'm giving them the blessing that was originally intended for Reuben and Simeon. I'm giving Ephraim Reuben's blessing, the firstborn, and I'm giving Manasseh Simeon's blessing for the secondborn. See, Judah became more like Ephraim, and Ephraim has become more like Judah, so that both houses of Israel, in the end, neither of these two houses can boast against the other. Both houses have gone through the same shame, the same exile, and in the end, we're going to be standing on equal footing with each other. In the same way, Abel was a prophetic picture of our Messiah. He bore the sin of his brother Cain when he was killed. You see, Abel's blood cried out from the ground. Okay, just like Yahushua's blood cried out from the ground. How many of you know that when our Messiah was killed, there was an earthquake and his blood dripped from off of the cross and it landed directly onto the mercy seat? Now, some people don't believe in the testimony of Ron Wyatt. I do believe it. I do believe the Ark of the Covenant was a legitimate miracle. Okay, I can't find a big enough image. See if I can find a better image of the Ark of the Covenant here. But this is a real image of the Ark of the Covenant that Ron Wyatt found below the place of the skull where our Messiah was slain. You know, and Ron Wyatt tested the blood. He took the blood to a lab of Israeli scientists, and they said, we don't know whose blood this is. They said, this blood has only 24 chromosomes. So you see, our Messiah's blood had all the chromosomes from his mother, making him a human being, but he had one Y male chromosome, autosome, from his father in heaven. So he was 100% human and 100% divine. And when the Israeli scientists found out whose blood it was, they said, whose blood is this? We've never seen blood like this before. Ron Wyatt says, it's the blood of your Messiah. And when he told that story, it always chokes me up. And he gets choked up when he tells the story. But listen, when our Messiah talked about Abel's blood crying out from the ground, I believe that's a shadow type of our Messiah. His blood was crying out from the ground. Even though Abel was righteous, he represents the house of Ephraim because he was killed as a result of Cain's idolatry, which is vanity and emptiness. What does it say about Ephraim in the book of Hosea 4:17? It says, Ephraim is joined to idols. Let him alone. You see, Ephraim used to be accustomed to idolatry. But later on in history, Ephraim becomes this multitude of nations who accepts the gospel of Messiah. In Hosea 12:1, it says, Ephraim feeds on wind and follows after the east wind. What does the east wind represent? Well, the sun rises in the east, right? So east wind has to do with every wind of doctrine. Remember how the Apostle Paul talked about every wind of doctrine? Well, those who follow pagan sun god worship, the sun rises in the east. What does it say in Ezekiel chapter 8? It says that they worship the sun with their back towards the temple. The ancient elders of Israel were facing their backs towards the temple, and they were facing the east, and they were worshiping the sun. You see, Ephraim they were the 10 northern tribes of the kingdom of Israel. They were the ones that were divorced by Yahweh in Jeremiah 3:8. They were divorced because King Jeroboam had set up golden calves, 2 golden calves, one at Dan and one at Mount Ephraim. And they stopped going to Jerusalem to keep the feasts. They stopped making pilgrimage. And because of it, Yahuwah divorced them. See, it says Ephraim feeds on wind and follows after the east wind. He daily increases lies and desolation, and they do make a covenant with the Assyrians. Now, I'm going to be talking about that later, about the Assyrian, how the prophet Yeshayahu, Isaiah, describes the man of sin, the son of perdition, as an Assyrian. We're going to get into that. We're going to talk about how the Assyrian is a type, an archetype of Nimrod, the builder of towers. Okay, so Ephraim represents modern day Christianity today. Modern day Christianity. Many of those who prophetically represent Ephraim have left the mother harlot church system, and they have now begun to embrace the Torah once again. But see, at one time, Ephraim was like many of us when we were in the Christian church, following after the east wind, keeping Christmas and Easter and Halloween and all these false pagan holidays. Ephraim was known for following after the east wind. In other words, pagan sun worship. And it says he daily increases lies and desolation, and they do make a covenant with the Assyrians. You see, I believe that there are many supposedly born-again believers, Christians, who are going to follow the anti-Messiah, the false Messiah, the son of perdition. And they're already following him. You know who I'm talking about, okay? The one they call their savior of America, Trump, okay? Cain represents the scapegoat because he was sent away. And although he wasn't innocent, he wasn't the innocent party, you see, our Messiah was sent into the wilderness to fast and pray for 40 days for the sins of both houses. You see, in Leviticus 16, we see the ordinance for the scapegoat. In Wayikra, Leviticus 16:8, it says, and Aaron shall cast lots upon the two goats, one lot for Yahweh and the other lot for Azazel, the scapegoat. In verse 10, it says, but the goat on which the lot fell to be the scapegoat shall be presented alive before Yahweh to make an atonement with him and to let him go for a scapegoat into the wilderness. And he that let go the goat for the scapegoat shall wash his clothes and bathe his flesh in water, and afterward come into the camp. Now, from these three verses, we understand that our Messiah did exactly that. Now, I recommend I have a 4-part teaching on YouTube called Messiah's Baptism and 40-Day Fast leading up to Yom Kippur. And in this teaching, I go into a lot of detail about the fact that our Messiah began his ministry, or he was baptized on what we would call the 1st of Elul. In other words, the 6th month on the Hebrew calendar. How do we know that he was baptized on the 1st of Elul? Because it's very easy to tell, because the day that he emerged out of that 40-day fast, he went to the synagogue, and what did he do? In Luke chapter 4, he read the Isaiah 61 scroll, and what did he do? He preached the acceptable year of Yahuwah. Well, what does that mean? The acceptable year means it was a jubilee. It was a jubilee. Every 50th year, a jubilee was pronounced or declared, and all debts were canceled. And if anybody from the 12 tribes had lost their inheritance or their land, they were given the opportunity to buy it back again. But you see, only the high priest, the Kohen Hagadol, was allowed to preach the acceptable year. So it was Aaron and his two sons. And his sons, according to Numbers chapter 10, verse 2, they were the ones that were supposed to sound the silver trumpets in a jubilee year. But now what do we have? We have in Luke chapter 4, our Messiah, who's not a Levite. He's not from the sons of Aaron. He's from the tribe of Yehuda, Judah, the Lion of the tribe of Yehuda. And he is preaching the acceptable year of Yahuwah. Okay? He's trumpeting it, not with silver trumpets. He's trumpeting it with his own voice. He's declaring that it's a jubilee year. He's the one ushering in a jubilee. Now, why is that so important? Because in Hebrews chapter 7, verse 14, what does it say about Melchizedek? Where does he come from? You find it right here. Try to find Hebrews chapter 7:14. Okay? It says in Hebrews 7:14, for it is evident that our master sprang out of Yehuda, Judah, of which tribe Moses spoke nothing concerning priesthood. And it is yet far more evident, for that after the similitude of Melchizedek, there arises another priest. You see, Melchizedek, the eternal high priest, comes from the tribe of Judah. But guess what? Has this ever occurred to you? Did you know that the tribe of Judah existed in the New Jerusalem even before Leah and Jacob gave birth to their fourth son, Judah? Did you know that all 12 tribes have already existed in the New Jerusalem? Think about that, okay? Even before Jacob gave birth to these 12 sons by his 2 wives and his 2 concubines, the names of these sons already existed in eternity. Remember what he said to Jeremiah? He said, before you were even formed in the womb, I knew you. I knew you. So you see, the 12 tribes, they have existed even before they were born. They existed in eternity. And what does that mean? That means that the tribe of Judah pre-existed the earthly man named Judah. In fact, when you look at the name Yehuda, what do you see in the name Yehuda? You see the father's name, Yahuwah, but there's one extra letter in the middle. That extra letter is the Dalet, the Hebrew letter Dalet. Okay, the door. The door. Okay, I'm going to type it out for you. Yahuda. Yehuda. Okay, Yehuda is the father's name with one extra letter in there, the door, the Dalet. See, what we have is that the Father and the Son are both from the tribe of Yehuda. Okay, let me show you. I'll show you this right now in Zechariah chapter 6. Okay, I know it sounds really crazy, but there's so many things in eternity that make sense to us when we think outside our carnal mind and our carnal understanding. See, where is Zechariah chapter 6, verse 11? Okay. Okay, now there was an actual priest. This was a real actual priest and his father in the days of Zerubbabel when they came out of the Babylonian captivity. And it says, take silver and gold and make crowns and set them upon the head of Joshua. Well, the name Joshua is Yahushua. Okay, Yahushua. In fact, the full spelling with all 6 letters is right here. Those pronouncing it as Yahusha, that's a scribal error. That's a scribal error. There's no Yahusha. It's Yahushua. Okay, so the name Yahushua is right here in Zechariah 6:11, and he's given many crowns. Who does that remind you of? The King of Kings and Master of Masters in Revelation 19, who's coming back on a white horse, and he's going to be given many crowns. And his name is Yahushua, and he's the son of who? Yahuzadek. Yahuzadek. Now, of course, in the English, they have it Josedek, but, in the Strongs, they have it pronounced Yehozadak. They use the Masoretic vowel points, but before the vowel points were added by the Masoretes in the 10th century, there were no vowels. We know that it's Yahuzadek. And what does that mean? It means Yahuwah is righteous. So what we have is the Father whose name is Yahuzadek, which means Yahuwah is righteous. And we have the Son whose name is Yahushua, which means Yahuwah is salvation. So you see, they're working together in tandem, the Father and the Son, so perfectly united, so perfectly intertwined. The Father is in the Son, and the Son is in the Father. Zechariah 6:12, it says, and speak unto him, saying, thus speaks Yahuwah of hosts, saying, behold, the man whose name is the branch. That word branch is semak. Semak. It means a sprout. It means a branch. Why? Because he is sprang where? Out of Judah. Didn't we just read that in Hebrews 7:14? That Melchizedek sprang out of Yehuda, Judah. But you know, not the earthly Judah. Okay, I mean, of course, Messiah had a physical genealogy. We know this, but he also had a divine genealogy in eternity. Okay, because Scripture says he has no genealogy in eternity. So when I say he had an eternal genealogy, what I mean by that is that the tribe of Judah has always existed. Even before the earthly Judah was born, the tribe of Judah has always existed. So the branch, he shall grow up out of his place, and he shall build the temple of Yahuwah. So when our Messiah comes back, he's going to rebuild the tabernacle of David that has fallen down. He's going to destroy the temple that was defiled by anti-Messiah, anti-Mashiach. He's going to destroy that one. Scripture says that Jerusalem is going to become a cup of trembling. It's going to be on fire. And it says that the earth is going to melt with fervent heat. And there's going to be a renewed heaven and a renewed earth. But it's not going to be the entirely new heaven and the entirely new earth until after the 1,000 years are finished. In the 8th millennium, that's when the new heaven and the new earth comes down out of heaven. But during the millennium, we're going to have a renewed, a cleansed, restored earth. Okay? And it's going to be with Messiah Yahushua as the king. And the government shall be upon his shoulder. He is going to be the branch. And he's going to build the tabernacle of David that has fallen. And that tabernacle is going to be like a temporary structure, like a tent. And that's going to be functioning while the Ezekiel temple goes up. The Ezekiel temple is going to be functioning all throughout the millennium. Okay, Cain represents the scapegoat because he was sent away. And like I said, he wasn't innocent. He wasn't the innocent party. But what happened was our Messiah, when he fasted and prayed in the wilderness, it says the Ruach HaKodesh, the Holy Spirit, led him into the wilderness. He was sent. He became the scapegoat. He took the place of the guilty party. Okay? So we can see by these instructions in Leviticus 16 that our Messiah fulfilled the pattern of the twin goats for Yom Kippur at his baptism. You see, when he was baptized in water, what does it say right here in Leviticus 16:26? It says that the high priest, the one who lets the scapegoat go, shall wash his clothes and bathe his flesh in water. Okay, you see, this is why Yahushua was baptized. He washed himself in water. And it was the Spirit of Yahuwah who sent him into the wilderness as the scapegoat to be tested and tempted and tried. Now, some people would argue, well, wait a minute. It says in the book of James that Elohim cannot be tempted with evil. Neither tempteth he any man. Well, I'm going to show you what that means. Tempteth evil. James 1:13. Okay? James 1:13. So people say, well, wait a minute. Our Messiah cannot be deity because he was tempted. He was tested and tried in the wilderness. And Scripture says that Elohim cannot be tempted with evil. See, what this means is that the devil tried to tempt him, but it didn't work. You see, just because it says he was tempted doesn't mean he really was tempted. It just means the devil made an effort, but it didn't work. Okay? He didn't give in. He didn't give in to the temptation. You see that? So it says, let no man say when he is tempted, I am tempted of Elohim. For Elohim cannot be tempted with evil, neither tempteth he any man. But every man is tempted when he is drawn away of his own lust and enticed. So people try to say, oh, Yahushua couldn't be deity because he was tempted. No. When it says he's tempted, it just means that the devil tried. It didn't work. Because I'll prove it to you from the book of Hebrews that it didn't work. It says that we have such a high priest that is touched with the feelings of our infirmities, right? Infirmities. Here it is, Hebrews 4:15. Hebrews 4:15. It tells us right here. For we have not a high priest which cannot be touched with the feeling of our infirmities. That word infirmities means weaknesses. But he was in all points tempted like as we are, yet without sin. So he was Elohim. He is Elohim come in the flesh. Why? Because Elohim cannot be tempted. And even though the devil tried, it didn't work.
Yeah, there's two different,
It didn't work.
Two variations of the definition of tempted in our vernacular. It's the experience or it's the situation that someone tries, is under. Or there's, from the modern perspective, when someone says, well, I was really tempted to break my diet.
Yeah, exactly.
That means you had a hard time with it. But he didn't say he had a hard time with it.
Mm-hmm.
So
right.
He said he didn't sin.
So it says right here that he didn't give in to the temptation. He didn't sin. He was in other words, he allowed himself to be tempted so that he could overcome the lust of the flesh and the pride of life and the lust of the eyes. In other words, he showed us how to do it. And how did he do it? He defeated the devil by the word of his mouth, because the word of Elohim is quick and powerful and sharper than any two-edged sword. All he did was say to the devil, it is written. And by the spoken word, he chased that devil out. And that devil left him. He left him. Okay? So, look, he went into the desert and fasted on our behalf. He showed us how to overcome sin, how to overcome the pride of life, the lust of the eyes, and the lust of the flesh. The three different temptations that the devil put him through. Those three temptations represent the pride of life, the lust of the eyes, and the lust of the flesh. And I go into way more detail about that in this other teaching I have called the Yom Kippur twin goats fulfilled in Messiah, which I'm going to cover that another time. I don't have time to get into because this is such a deep teaching. It's very long, very lengthy. We'll go over this another time, but just want you to know that our Messiah, although the devil tried to tempt him, it didn't work. Okay? So Abel, he represented the sacrificial goat because he was slain. See, the sacrificial goat is the one that gets killed. The scapegoat that is the one that gets sent away. So Yahushua comes to earth, and what does he do? When he gets dunked in water, when he gets baptized, what's he doing when he gets baptized? He's displaying himself as the sacrificial goat. The sacrificial goat, because why? What did Paul tell us in Romans chapter 6? He says that when we are baptized into his death. Okay, so baptism is a prophetic picture of death, because when you go underneath that water, you are symbolically dying to the old man. And you are coming out of the water as a new creation. So Messiah's legal moment of death was his baptism. When he went underneath that water, he was displaying himself as the sacrificial goat that was going to die 3.5 years later. Now, I know Michael Rood and some other teachers say that his ministry lasted for 1 year. No, I have absolute proof that his ministry lasted for 3.5 years. I'll show it to you right here. It's in Luke chapter 4, verse 25 through 26. Right after he gets done reading the Isaiah 61 scroll and he preaches the acceptable year of Yahuwah, he closes the book. He gives it back to the minister. See, he only read half of this verse. The remainder of this verse in Isaiah 61:2 says, and the day of vengeance of our Elohim. Well, he hasn't fulfilled that piece yet. When he comes back on a white horse in Revelation 19, he's going to fulfill that other piece. He's going to come back on the day of vengeance, and he's going to destroy the adversary, okay? But when he first started his ministry, it was in a Jubilee year. He came to preach the acceptable year. He closes the book and gives it to the minister. Everyone's looking at him. Why? Because he's from the tribe of Yehuda, Judah, and what's he doing? He's preaching the acceptable year of Yahuwah. And in their culture, they understood that's for the Levites. The Levites are supposed to preach the acceptable year. Well, this guy's from the tribe of Judah. What's he doing preaching the acceptable year? Oh, so you mean he's the high priest? Oh, so you mean he's Melchizedek? What? Seriously? You can imagine what they're thinking.
And I don't think they all got it at the time. I think after Messiah's death and resurrection, they did like, wow, do you realize what happened then?
Right.
On that day?
Right. And what does he say? He says, this day is this scripture fulfilled in your ears. Okay. So then right after he does this, what does he say? He says, you will surely say unto me this proverb, physician, heal yourself. Whatsoever you've heard in Capernaum, do also in your country. And he said, verily, I say unto you, no prophet is accepted in his own country. But I tell you of a truth, many widows were in Israel in the days of Elijah, when the heaven was shut up 3 years and 6 months. There you go. He's talking about 3.5 years. And what is he doing? He's comparing his ministry, which is just started. You see, he gets baptized. He's not quite 30 years old at his baptism. Scripture tells us he was beginning to be about 30 years old at his baptism. But while he's out there in the wilderness fasting for 40 days, he turns 30 years old. When? On the Feast of Trumpets. He wasn't born on Sukkot. Because, see, here it is, Yom Kippur. He's doing something that only the high priest is allowed to do. That means he had to be 30 years old by Yom Kippur.
He followed the earthly rules and stepped into the heavenly priesthood.
So if his birthday was on Sukkot, that means he wasn't 30 years old yet. His birthday was still 5 days away. But the fact that he's able to preach the acceptable year on Yom Kippur, and 40 days earlier, we're told in Luke's gospel at his baptism, he's not quite 30 years old yet, but he's about to be. That means he turned 30 years old on the Feast of Trumpets. That's when he became 30. Now he's in the synagogue and he's preaching the acceptable year. And right after he, only reads half of Isaiah 61:2 and closes the book, then what does he do? He compares his ministry to the prophet Eliyahu, who only had a ministry of 3.5 years. That's half of 7 years. That's half of Daniel's 70th week. Daniel's 70th week was cut in half. Our Messiah fulfilled half of it. And in the midst of the week, he is cut off. And then what? Okay, this widow, she represents the nation of Israel. Remember in Isaiah 54? What does it say about Israel? She becomes a widow. Israel, the nation, becomes a widow. And he tells Israel, he says, for your maker is your husband. Yahuwah of hosts is his name. And your redeemer, the Holy One of Israel. The Elohim of the whole earth shall he be called. For Yahuwah has called you as a woman forsaken and grieved in spirit, and a wife of youth when you were refused, says Yahuwah. For a moment have I forsaken you, and with great mercies will I gather you. In a little wrath I hid my face from you for a moment, But with everlasting kindness will I have mercy on you, says Yahuwah, your Redeemer. Okay, so he's telling her, Israel, you shall forget the reproach of your widowhood. Okay, he's telling the nation of Israel, you shall forget the reproach of your widowhood. So now we go back to Luke chapter 4, and now we understand the metaphor. Our Messiah is talking about the ministry of the prophet Elijah, and how it lasted for 3.5 years. He's comparing himself to Eliyahu, who was sent to this widow. In the same way, our Messiah is sent to the widow. Why? Why is she a widow? She killed her own husband, her own bridegroom, unknowingly. She didn't mean to do it. She didn't know he was the Messiah. She accidentally kills her own Messiah. Okay, so this widow has a son. Her only son dies. And then what happens? Elijah, stretches himself over the boy 3 times. 3 times. 3 days and 3 nights in the heart of the earth. And then what? The boy is raised from the dead. Do you see the metaphor? You see, our Messiah, this is at the very beginning of his ministry. He just got done finishing a 40-day fast. He comes out of his 40-day fast after Yom Kippur is over. Well, he's still fasting, obviously, because this is on Yom Kippur. He's still fasting, hasn't broken his fast yet. He comes out of the wilderness. He preaches the acceptable year. He reads the Isaiah 61 scroll. And what does he tell them? He says, the Spirit of Yahuwah is upon me because he has anointed me. He's saying, I'm the anointed one. I'm the Mashiach. I'm the one you've been waiting for. And he says, I've come to preach the acceptable year. In other words, I'm your high priest. I'm the one who sprang out of Judah. I'm Melchizedek. And he tells them, the scripture is fulfilled in your ears. And he goes on and he says, remember the prophet Elijah? These are the days of Elijah, like it says in Malachi 4. Elijah must come first before the Messiah comes. Well, Elijah came first. It was John the Baptist. John, they asked John, they said, are you Elijah? Are you Eliyahu? John says, no, I'm not. He says, I'm the voice of one crying in the wilderness. But then the Messiah says to them, he was the Elijah that you were waiting for. You see, John was not a reincarnation of the prophet Elijah. He came in the spirit of Elijah. He came in the anointing of Elijah. This is why our Messiah said, even though he wasn't a reincarnation of Elijah, he was the Elijah. He was the one you were waiting for. You see, when the real Messiah came, there had to be a predecessor who came before him. That forerunner, that predecessor was John the Baptist, who came in the spirit of Elijah. This is why he's comparing his ministry to Elijah, because Elijah's ministry lasted for 3.5 years. And our Messiah fulfilled only half of that last 7 years of Daniel's 70th week. Then what happens? There's this 2,000-year gap in history called the fullness of the Gentiles. And then what? The 2 witnesses come onto the scene. As soon as the abomination of desolation is seen in the Jerusalem temple, and by the way, they are getting ready to build it. They are carving out the stones. They are preparing the materials. The temple is going to be built extremely soon. Okay. And when we see the abomination of desolation stand in the holy place, the last 3.5 years of Daniel's 70th week is going to be kicked off, and the evangelistic outreach of the 2 witnesses, the corporate 2 witnesses, the 2 olive trees and the 2 candlesticks. In other words, the two houses of Israel that are born again, and the 2 overcoming assemblies that are born again, that have been grafted in, the 2 olive trees, these 4 groups of people that make up the 2 witnesses. They represent the 4 mothers that make up the whole house of Israel: Leah, Rachel, Zilpah, and Bilhah. The 4 groups 2 olive trees, 2 candlesticks. They represent the 4 mothers that make up the whole house of Israel. There's going to be a corporate 2 witnesses in the earth. And these guys are going to be like the John the Baptists. They're going to be operating in the spirit of Elijah and the spirit of Moses. They're going to be the John the Baptists in the earth. And they are going to be preaching hell, fire, and brimstone. So get ready. It's getting ready to come. The Great Tribulation hasn't begun yet, but we are on the cusp of it. It is, I believe it's going to begin very soon, probably within the next year. Maybe the next 2 years at the most, but I truly feel strongly that it could happen next year. I believe they're going to do it very soon. So the point is that our Messiah already told us his ministry was 3.5 years. Okay? He compared himself to the prophet Eliyahu. Now, getting back to this blog. So Adam and Eve lost both of their sons as punishment for their sin in the garden. Who else lost a son? We have King David, who was punished when Yahuwah took his son that was born to him by Bathsheba. Now, this was a judgment that was brought upon David because he had her husband Uriah killed in battle, attempting to cover up his own sin of adultery. See, David did the exact same thing that Cain did. He did the exact same thing that Adam and Eve did. They tried to cover their sin with fig leaves. Didn't David try to cover up his sin? He slew Uriah, the husband of Bathsheba, to cover his sin. You see, and then in Genesis 4:15, Yahuwah pronounced vengeance on anyone who slays Cain. Okay, listen to what he says. And Yahuwah said unto him, therefore, whosoever slays Cain, vengeance shall be upon him 7-fold. And Yahuwah set a mark upon Cain, lest any finding him should kill him. Guess what the mark was? Guess what the mark was? You know, people have speculated over the centuries. What is the mark of Cain? Okay, I'll show you what it is. The mark of Cain is the Aleph, the wall, and the Taw. In other words, the red heifer, the nail, and the cross. It's the mark of salvation. The Hebrew word is ot. It's Aleph, Wah, and Taw. The sacrificial goat or the sacrificial animal, the nail, and the cross. These are the paleo letters. Okay, I'll show it to you. It's in Genesis 4:15. Okay, this is the mark. If Cain was a Nephilim, do you think Yahuwah would have given him that mark? No way. Cain was not a Nephilim. Let's see what that mark is. Okay, there it is. Ot. Can you guys see that? There you have Aleph. Let me see. You got the Aleph. You got the Wah, which is the nail. And you got the cross, the 2 sticks. The cross is a prophetic picture of the 2 sticks, the 2 houses of Israel, right? Okay, so vengeance is a word that is closely associated with Yom Kippur. Because why? When Messiah returns in Revelation 19, he's coming back on the day of vengeance. He's going to avenge the blood of his servants. See, Yom Kippur is a day that's all about vengeance. And why 7-fold? Because see, 7 has to do with covenant. The word 7, Sheba, means to repeat something 7 times, to take an oath. Like I said, in Revelation 19:2, our Messiah Yahushua will return on a white horse to avenge the blood of his servants. They were martyred for the testimony of Yahushua. See, this will mark the 7th-day Sabbath. He's coming in the 7th millennium. What does it say in 2 Peter 3:8? It says, but beloved, be not ignorant of this one thing, that one day is with Yahuwah as 1,000 years, and 1,000 years as one day. It's going to be on the 6,000th year. The year 6,000, that's going to be the 120th Jubilee, which I'm only speculating here. I'm not prophesying, but according to Josephus, he says that The year 23 BC was the 79th Jubilee. That means by adding 50 years, we come to the year 27 AD, which was a Jubilee year, which is when our Messiah would have began his ministry on Yom Kippur. Now, we add 40 more Jubilees to that, 2,000 years, and we come to the year 2027 through 2028. I'm saying it's entirely possible that our Messiah could return anytime between Yom Kippur 2027 and Yom Kippur 2028. I'm not sure exactly because Pope Gregory removed some days from the calendar, so the Romans kind of messed up the calendar, but we can get pretty close. I believe we're getting super close, okay? Genesis 6:3 gives us a clue on how to count the days for humanity. We are told in Bereshit, Genesis 6:3, and Yahuwah said, my spirit shall not always strive with man, for that he also is flesh, yet his day shall be 120 years. Well, this word years in Hebrew, shana, can also mean a jubilee. It means an age. It doesn't just mean the 360-day calendar year. It can also mean an age. So if we take 50 times 120, 120 jubilees is 6,000 years. Remember, one day is like 1,000 years with Yahuwah. So the sixth day of creation will be like the macrocosm or the microcosm of the 6,000th year. When Yahuwah rested on the seventh day, after he created everything, the seventh day is a microcosm of the seventh millennium when Messiah comes back and takes his bride to himself. So you see, on the sixth day of creation is when Yahuwah formed mankind in his own image. Therefore, the number 6 is the number of humanity. It is therefore fitting that the kingdoms of this world, the kingdoms of this present world, will end when Yahushua returns. He will usher in a new millennial reign. See, Yahushua is going to redeem. He's going to purchase. He's going to recover all that the enemy has stolen from Adam and Eve and their 2 sons. You see, this family, this first family in the garden, lost so much, but Yahushua has made a way that they are going to be redeemed. These 2 sons in Adam and Eve are a prophetic shadow picture of both houses of Israel. Yeshayahu, Isaiah 61:2 says that he came the first time to proclaim the acceptable year of Yahuwah. That was a jubilee. And then when he comes back the second time, it's going to also be another jubilee. It's going to also be on a Yom Kippur. And it's going to be the day of vengeance of our Elohim. And he's going to comfort all that mourn. Revelation 19:2 says, for true and righteous are his judgments, for he has judged the great whore, which did corrupt the earth with her fornication, and has avenged. There's that word avenged, which is related to the word vengeance. See, avenged, it comes from a Latin root, vengeance, avenged the blood of his servants at her hand. Now, I want to get into the legality of, are we commanded to fast for Yom Kippur? Now, there are certain ministries that are purporting that there's no such command to fast for Yom Kippur. However, I hate to say this, but these ministries are woefully uninformed about what the Hebrew scriptures teach on this subject. Consequently, they are misleading the sheep. Now, let me get this straight. I'm not saying that we have to atone for our own sins. No way. There are people that believe that they have to fast for Yom Kippur to atone for their own sins. No. We don't fast because we're atoning for our own sins. Stay with me. You'll learn something here.
So you're saying that when it's portrayed like that, that's a true statement. We're not commanded for sin, for the remission of sins. We're not
supposed to.
But that's a straw man argument.
Right.
Unless they're speaking purely to the mainstream Christian crowd who would assume that's what it is.
Right.
But for those who already know something about the feasts, that's a straw man argument.
That's right.
Okay.
So the instructions for Yom Kippur in Leviticus 23:27 command us to afflict our souls. Now, this is really interesting. Let's look at this word afflict. The Hebrew word afflict is anah, and it means to subjugate, to make weak. And then it says the word soul is nephesh, and it means appetite, desire, passion. Therefore, to afflict your soul means to subjugate your appetite, to make yourself weak. Now, I don't know about you, but I don't know any other way to subjugate my appetite and to make myself weak except to fast from food. Okay? Now, you know, when it says afflict your soul, does it mean that you whip yourself? You know, like these monks in these monasteries do? Does it mean that you get on the floor and you fake cry like, boo-hoo-hoo-hoo-hoo? No, no, no. No, afflicting your soul, I'm going to prove to you it has to do with fasting. You see, in Yeshayahu, Isaiah 58:3, it gives us a clue. What does he say here? He says, wherefore have we fasted, say they, and you see it not? Wherefore have we afflicted our soul, and you take no knowledge? Behold, in the day of your fast, you find pleasure and exact all your labors. Now, see, Yahuwah is rebuking Israel because he says, it's a good thing that you're fasting. That's great, but it means nothing to me if you continue in these other sins. Because if you're only fasting superficially, but there's no change taking place in your heart, then this fast isn't doing you any good. It's not doing anything for you. But nevertheless, it's obvious that Isaiah 58 is equating fasting with afflicting your soul. Okay? Now, some of these ministries, I'm not going to name them, but they say, oh no, we don't have to fast for Yom Kippur. And then they say the word afflict doesn't mean to fast. Well, that's true. It doesn't. It says to subjugate, to make weak. But now you combine it with the word soul, which means appetite, desire, passion. Now you have a complete thought. To afflict the soul means to subjugate your appetite, to make yourself weak. You see, they only look up the word afflict and they go, see, it doesn't mean fast. Not so fast. Now combine the word afflict with the word soul, and now you have a complete thought. Okay? They think they've got the smoking gun. See, afflict doesn't mean fast. Not so fast. Combine it with the word soul. Afflict soul means subjugate your appetite.
And you would say, of course, that doesn't just mean your physical appetite for food or drink, water.
Sure.
You would say that, of course, the bigger picture is, suppressing the appetite of the lusts of your flesh as a whole and subjugating yourself to Yahuwah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. But I'm going to get into this even deeper. So, notice that afflicting one's soul is equivalent to fasting in Isaiah 58. But let's look at the word for fasting. It's number 6684, tsum. It means to cover over the mouth. Woo, wow, what does that mean? Why are we supposed to cover the mouth? Okay, if the word fast means to cover the mouth, we've already seen that the word Kippur comes from another word, kafar, which means to cover. In other words, Yahweh killed an animal and covered Adam and Eve with skins. It was the day of covering. Well, wait a minute. If kafar means to cover and the word fast means to cover the mouth, are we seeing a similarity here yet? Okay, so the Garden of Eden was the first day of covering, the first time somebody was covered because of their sin. Well, what was the first sin? Was the first sin eating? Do you think that if the first sin had to do with eating, now when we fast, we're being reminded of something? Are we now going to reverse the curse by abstaining from eating so that we can be reminded that the first sin entered the world because of eating by opening the mouth? And now when we cover the mouth, we are being taken back to the garden and recognizing where we went wrong? You see, in Bereshit, Genesis 3:21, unto Adam and also to his wife did Yahweh Elohim make coats, coverings of skin, and clothe them. In other words, he covered them. See, Yom Kippur is synonymous with having our sins covered. Adam and Eve sinned when they ate something. This is the opposite of fasting. Eating is the opposite of fasting. And what did they eat? They ate of the tree of knowledge of good and evil, which they were forbidden to eat. Okay? Therefore, when we fast, we cover our mouth. This is to remind us of the original sin in the garden, which began with eating. Bereshit, Genesis 3:12, and the man said, the woman whom you gave to be with me, she gave me of the tree, and I did eat. Okay, verse 13, and Yahweh Elohim said unto the woman, what is this that you have done? And the woman said, the serpent beguiled me, and I did eat. And then what? The serpent is told in Genesis 3:14, and Yahweh Elohim said unto the serpent, because you have done this, you are cursed above all cattle and above every beast of the field. Upon your belly shall you go, and dust shall you eat. You see, the curse is that he tempted them to eat. Now he's going to have to eat dust. He's going to eat dirt. Okay? And then in Genesis 3:15, the seed of the woman prophecy, it says, and I will put enmity, that's hatred, that's hostility between you and the woman. He's telling this to the serpent. He's saying, I'm going to put hatred between the woman and the serpent, between you and the woman, between your seed and her seed. Well, the woman's seed, she did give birth to Cain, right? Cain was her seed. So how could Cain be the woman's seed and the serpent's seed at the same time? When Yahuwah is making a distinction and saying that he's going to put enmity between the woman's seed and the serpent's seed. That's proof that Cain can't be the serpent's seed, because then Cain would be, at enmity with himself. Of course, I'm sure he hated himself for what he did to his brother, but that's not the point. The point is that the woman's seed could not have been contaminated by the serpent seed, because it's been proven that every sex partner that a woman has, the
DNA from the sperm,
women's brains, and they said, what is this? Is this from a male child she gave birth to? And they came to find out that it was from every partner that she's had. So if Eve, Hawa, however you want to say it, if she had sex with the serpent, her DNA would have been contaminated. She would have passed that on to every living person on the planet, because Eve is the mother of all the living. So it's not possible that Eve had sex with the serpent. It's not possible. See, because she ended up becoming the mother of all the living, including our Messiah. Because in Luke chapter 3, verse 38, our Messiah's lineage traces all the way back to Adam. That's why in 1 Corinthians 15, the Apostle Shaul says that our Messiah is the second Adam. He's the second Adam, the last Adam. So there's no way that Eve had sex with the serpent. That doctrine comes straight out of, Kabbalah, Gnosticism, it's damnable heresies, okay? In Genesis 3:15, I will put enmity, hostility, hatred between you and the woman. He's talking to the serpent. And he says, between your seed. Now, of course, I do believe in the Nephilim, but that didn't show up until Genesis chapter 6. Okay? We know there's a serpent seed. I do believe there's a serpent seed. It just didn't start with Cain. It started here in Genesis chapter 6. Okay? Where it says there were giants in the earth in those days. And that word giants is Nephil. And that word Nephil in Hebrew means fallen ones. There were giants in the earth in those days, and also after that, when the sons of Elohim came in unto the daughters of men, and they bare children to them, the same became mighty men. which were of old. And that word old is olam. It means eternity. You see, these were eternal beings, fallen angels. And, I once interviewed a guy. I'm not going to say his name. If I said his name, many of you would know who it is. But I once interviewed a guy on Hebrew Nation Radio when I had my radio show back in 2010, 2011, somewhere in that time frame. I asked him, because he had been a Satanist at one time. He had been a Freemason. I said, how is it possible that, fallen angels can have relations with human women? He says, well, these fallen angels, they have the ability to walk through walls. They have the ability to dematerialize, to disappear, to, kind of like in the Star Trek movies when they would say, beam me up, Scotty, and they would just, they would kind of disintegrate and they would, rematerialize in a different location. He said they have the ability to do this. He said, but if they drink human blood, they lose all those qualities. They become like one of us. And when they become like one of us, they are able to procreate with human women. Okay. And that made a lot of sense to me because why? If you go to Jude chapter 1, well, there's only one chapter, Jude 1:6, it says, and the Malachim, the angels which kept not their first estate, but left their own habitation, he has reserved in everlasting chains under darkness unto the judgment of the great day. In other words, these are fallen angels who they gave up their supernatural estate. They drank human blood. They took on a different habitation, a different body, a different kind of body. Okay, let's look at these words here. The word estate means a commencement, chief, order, time, place, rank, beginning, magistrate, power, principality, principle, or rule. So in other words, they, this is the Greek word arche. It's where we get the word archangel, Michael, So they left their position of being a principality. They kept not their first estate. And it says they left their habitation. Let's look at that word habitation. The word habitation is oikiterion, which means a residence, a habitation, a house. In other words, their bodies. They chose to leave their position as a power, as a principality, as a demonic entity. And what did they do? They took on a different form. They chose to, they drank human blood. They put on a different kind of body. They left their habitation. And it says that he reserved them in everlasting chains. They were forbidden to have, relations with human women, and they did it anyway. And it says here, even as Sodom and Gomorrah and the cities about them in like manner, giving themselves over to fornication and going after strange flesh. Well, what is strange flesh? Okay, the word strange is heteros. Okay, altered. Just like what that one thing does to your body when it gets injected. I'm not going to say the word, but the V. Okay, altered. Just remember that. Altered. Flesh. Sarx. Okay, flesh. That is the meat of an animal, the body opposed to the soul or the spirit. The external. Okay, so physical, human being. They went after strange, altered human beings, altered flesh. Okay, so I do believe in a serpent seed, but the serpent seed doctrine is coined, that phrase is coined serpent seed doctrine because it purports that, Eve had sex with the serpent. And I do not believe that. That is not supported by the scriptures at all. In fact, Eve even said, I have gotten me a man from Yahuwah. She didn't say, I've gotten me a man from the serpent. And as I've already shown you, after Yahweh atoned for Adam and Eve, and they were cleansed, she conceived. Just like in the ordinance of the law of jealousy in Numbers, when the woman is free from her guilt, she conceives. Okay, so when Adam and Eve were free from their guilt because Yahweh had covered their sin, he had atoned for them, now she conceived. Okay, now just because Cain murdered his brother, that doesn't make him a Nephilim. Because even King David did the same thing. And we know that King David was not a Nephilim. So, I hear people always using these scriptures where Yahweh or Yahushua says to the Pharisees, you are of your father the devil. That doesn't mean they were the physical father of the devil. It just means that they serve the devil. That's all it means. It doesn't mean they're the physical offspring of the devil. Okay? I'm not saying they couldn't be. I'm sure that some of them could be Nephilim, but that doesn't prove anything. When he says you're of your father the devil, that can mean that you're a spiritual offspring of the devil, meaning that you have entered into covenant with the devil. You've chosen to worship the devil. Okay? So, now check this out. In Genesis 3:15, when it says, and I will put enmity, hostility, hatred between you and the woman, between your seed and her seed, in the King James, it says, it shall bruise. It shall bruise or crush your head, and you shall bruise or crush his heel. But guess what? It doesn't say it. It doesn't say it. Guess what it says in Hebrew? It says he. It doesn't say it. It says he. Okay? It says he. Let's look at it. Genesis 3:15. Genesis 3:15. Okay? And I will put enmity between you and the woman, between your seed and her seed. The word it is who. H-U. It's number 1931. And it says the second form is the feminine, beyond the Pentateuch, a primitive word, the third person pronoun, singular. He, she, or it. Okay, but guess what's next to the it? What's next to the it? And I can't show it to you here, but what you can see, what's next to the it is Aleph and the Ta, okay? The Aleph Ta, watch this. I look at it in the Hebrew Old Testament, you see Aleph Tav, right there next to the he. Right there next to the he, Aleph Ta. So, who is the he? It says, I will put enmity between you, meaning the serpent, and the woman, between your seed and her seed. He is the Messiah. He's the seed of the woman, the Aleph and the Ta. He shall bruise. He shall crush the head of the serpent. Okay, so it doesn't say it. It actually says he. Okay, the King James doesn't show it, but the Hebrew Old Testament, let me show it to you. The Hebrew Old Testament, right here, Hebrew Old Testament, Genesis 3:15. Okay, and let me see. I got to find out where it is. It's number 859. What is 859? Every time we see number 859, it's the Aleph Tav. Okay, right here. Aleph Tav. There you go. Aleph Ta. It's not an it, it's a he. It's the Messiah, the Aleph and the Ta. The first and the last. He's the one that's going to crush the head of the serpent. Okay? And, he's already done it when he died on the tree for us, but he's ultimately going to slay the dragon when he comes back as well. The beast system. So you see, fasting is therefore a great way to show Yahweh that we are willing to reverse the curse brought into the world through the serpent and through Adam and his wife. What does it say in Romans 5:12? It says, wherefore, as by one man, Adam, sin entered into the world, and death by sin, and so death passed upon all men, for that all have sinned. Okay, so now I want to make this abundantly clear. Fasting does not atone for sins. I want to clear up a misunderstanding about the purpose of fasting. There are some people who assume that when we fast for Yom Kippur, that we are attempting to atone for our own sins. However, I've already illustrated that there is no atonement for sins without the shedding of blood, and not just any blood, but the blood of our Messiah, who is the spotless and sinless Lamb from eternity. Okay, Hebrews 9:22 says, and almost all things are purged by the law with blood, without the shedding of blood, there is no remission. And then in Kepha Aleph, that's 1 Peter 1:18, it says, for as much as you know that you were not redeemed with corruptible things as silver and gold from your vain conversation received by tradition from your fathers. And then in 1 Peter 1:19, it says, but with the precious blood of Messiah as of a lamb without blemish and without spot. And then in verse 20, who verily was foreordained before the foundation of the world, but was manifest in these last times for you. In other words, he's always been the lamb slain from the foundation of the world, even before he came to earth and demonstrated it for us in the flesh. In eternity, he has always had this in his heart. He has always known that he was going to create these people that he loves, called mankind, called humanity. And he knew in his foreknowledge that we were going to sin. He knew that the devil was going to deceive us and we were going to fall for his tricks and his lies. And he knew that he was going to have to come down here in the flesh and die on our behalf. He knew that he was going to have to become the atonement. He knew this. And so he did it in eternity. He did it in his mind and in his heart before he even did it in the flesh. So what is the purpose of fasting? If our Messiah has already atoned for our sin, then what is the purpose of fasting? It is meant to remind us of our depravity as human beings and that we are weak in the flesh and that we need a Savior to deliver us from our sinful nature. So several reasons why I believe we should fast for Yom Kippur. Number one, our Messiah fasted for 40 days leading up to Yom Kippur when he was sent into the wilderness as the scapegoat. Therefore, he fasted from the time of his baptism right up until the end of Yom Kippur when he entered into the synagogue and read the Isaiah 61 scroll out loud in the assembly. Now, I'm not suggesting that we have to fast for 40 days like he did. That's not what I'm saying. However, these are the same 40 days when Moses went up the mountain a second time and he got the second set of tablets. You see, the first set of tablets were broken because of the sin with the golden calf, and therefore our Messiah was sent into the wilderness as the scapegoat to be tested and tried on our behalf. During those same 40 days, our Messiah was demonstrating to us how to overcome the sinful nature by denying the flesh. And what does he command us to do? In Matthew 16:24, Yahushua said unto his disciples, if any man will come after me, let him deny himself and take up his cross and follow me. Now you can deny yourself in other ways, sure. But you see, eating is one of the most primal things. The first thing we do when we come out of the womb is our mother teaches us to suck the breast and get milk out of the breast. So that's the most primal thing. We are so hardwired to eat, to take in something into our mouth. We are so hardwired. I can say, I'm just going to give up my favorite television show, or I could say I'm just going to give up, something that something else besides food. And I remember being a child in the Catholic school, and the Catholic nuns thought that our Messiah's fast took place for 40 days leading up to Easter Sunday. Those are the 40 days of Tammuz. In ancient Babylonian mystery school religions, they teach that Tammuz went on a hunting trip and he got killed by a wild boar. And so in ancient mystery religions, they teach that we have to fast for Tammuz for 40 days leading up to Easter Sunday. So the Catholic Church had it all wrong. They were telling us kids that our Messiah fasted for 40 days leading up to Easter Sunday, and that they call that Lent. So we had to give up something for Lent. And I remember the Catholic nun would write on the chalkboard, and she would call upon each student and say, "What are you giving up for Lent?" And I remember kids saying, "Oh, I'm not going to watch the Brady Bunch for 40 days. Somebody else would say, "I'm going to stop eating my favorite Jolly Rancher candies." Something stupid like that. You know what I mean? But guess what? That's not a big sacrifice. He died for us. He suffered. And you can't give up food for 24 hours? Come on. If you can't give up food for 24 hours and he died for you, then I'm sorry. There's a problem here, okay? Yahushua says, "Let him deny himself and take up his cross and follow me." Mark 8:34. And when he had called the people unto him with his disciples also, he said unto them, "Whosoever will come after me, let him deny himself and take up his cross and follow me." And he said the same thing in Luke 9:23. Okay. And he said to them all, "If any man will come after me, let him deny himself and take up his cross and follow me." Now, why 3 times? I believe that this statement is in there 3 times for the 3 sins of the pride of life, the lust of the eyes, and the lust of the flesh. And how many temptations did he endure in the wilderness? 3. 3 temptations. And I believe that when he endured these 3 temptations, he was teaching us how to conquer the pride of life, the lust of the eyes, and the lust of the flesh. And I get way deeper into that in my other blog called, the twin goats fulfilled on Yom Kippur. The twin goats fulfilled in Messiah on Yom Kippur. So we'll go over that another time. Now, there's no other way that I'm aware of that we can subjugate our appetites and desires except through fasting from food. In my opinion, fasting's the best way to deny yourself, to crucify the flesh. I mean, there's really nothing else I can give up. It's not like I watch some, Brady Bunch or some stupid TV show like that. I mean, yeah, of course we should give up television on Yom Kippur. That's a given. Okay, we should give up our phones. We should give up internet. We should give up everything on Yom Kippur. Didn't he give up everything? So is anyone going to say, "Oh, well, I'll give up my TV show, but I'm not going to give up food"? Look, give up everything. He gave up everything. Now, if you're a child or you have some kind of, blood sugar problem, I would recommend, children, not forcing your child to fast until he becomes old enough, and every child's different. Every child is going to be different. But if your child's like 12 or 13 years old and they want to fast with you, you might suggest fasting maybe only 1 meal a day or 2 meals a day. Maybe put them on a juice fast, make some green juice, something to keep them hydrated, something to keep their blood sugar even. There's different ways that you can fast without causing your blood sugar, to drop or whatever. Each person has to decide for themselves how they want to go about it. Okay. Isaiah 58 makes it abundantly clear that afflicting our soul is indeed fasting. Anybody tells you differently, they're wrong. You see, the rebuke that Yahuwah had in Isaiah 58 is that the people were fasting on Yom Kippur, but they were sinning in other areas, such as oppressing their employees, not feeding the hungry, fighting with their fists, and with heated debates. Now, this is interesting. I found 10 times. Anytime you see the number 10 in Scripture, the number 10 always points to the 10 northern tribes of Israel. They were the lost sheep. They were the ones that were divorced. So I find it interesting that 10 times we are commanded to afflict our souls. I believe it's because there are 10 northern tribes of Israel, which our Messiah referred to as his lost sheep. Okay, in Jeremiah 50, verse 6, in Matthew 10, 16, Matthew 15, 24, Luke 15, 46, he spoke of the lost sheep of the house of Israel. Okay, so number 5, to afflict one's soul literally means to subjugate the appetites of the flesh. It also means to make oneself weak, to humble oneself. Well, how better to make yourself weak than to deny yourself the most basic human desire that we have is to eat, right? Make yourself weak. I can't think of any other way to make yourself weak. Can you? I mean, what are you going to do? Take a whip like these monks in these monasteries and whip yourself until you're weak? Now that would be self-abuse. Okay. So here's all 10 times in Wayikra, Leviticus 16:29. It says this is a statute forever. It doesn't say only until the Messiah dies on the cross. And then after that, you don't really have to afflict your souls anymore. You don't have to fast after the Messiah dies. No, he says forever. Okay. And then in verse 31, Wayikra 16:31, it shall be a Sabbath of rest unto you. You shall afflict your souls by a statute forever. And Leviticus 23:27. Also on the 10th day of the 7th month, there shall be a day of atonement. It shall be a holy convocation, and you shall afflict your souls, okay, and offer an offering made by fire. We're not going to do an animal sacrifice in the temple. We're not going to make an offering made by fire, but we can offer up our lives as a living sacrifice, right? And then in Leviticus 23:29, it says, for whatsoever soul it shall be that shall not be afflicted, in that same day he shall be cut off from among his people. Now, I don't know about you, but I'm not going to take a chance and say, you don't have to fast on Yom Kippur, and then come to find out on Judgment Day that I was leading people to cut themselves off from Israel by telling them they don't have to fast on Yom Kippur. Look, if it says that you're supposed to afflict your soul, and that word means to make yourself weak, to subjugate the appetites of the flesh, and we've already seen in Isaiah 58 that fasting is equivalent to afflicting your soul and covering the mouth, right? So I'm not going to take this chance with my eternal soul. I'm not going to say, you don't have to fast. And come to find out, all these people who didn't take it seriously, who didn't fast because they were told by some teacher, no worries, you don't have to fast. I'm not going to take that chance of cutting myself off from my people. I think it's worth the risk to go without food for 24 hours, don't you? We're not doing it to earn our salvation. We're not doing it to atone for our sins. We're doing it because the Torah says so. Okay? Just like Yahuwah said to Adam and Eve, do not eat of the tree of knowledge of good and evil. They couldn't even keep one commandment. They couldn't even obey that one single commandment. How hard is it for you to abstain from food for 24 hours? If he says to afflict your soul, do it. What's the big deal? Do it. It's nothing. Okay, if you have to drink water to stay hydrated, then drink water. Stay hydrated. That's fine. But whatever modification you have to make, but do the fast in some form. To show him that you're willing to deny the flesh, to show him that you're willing to take up your cross and to deny yourself and to follow him. Okay? In Leviticus 23:32, it shall be a Sabbath of rest. You shall afflict your souls. In the 9th day of the month at evening, from evening unto evening, you shall celebrate your Sabbath. In Numbers 29:7, and you shall have on the 10th day of the 7th month a holy convocation. You shall afflict your souls and you shall not do any work therein. Numbers 30:13. Okay, so that one doesn't have to do with, well, it does say to afflict the soul, but it just says, every vow and every binding oath to afflict the soul, her husband may establish it, and her husband may make it void. In other words, if a woman takes an oath to fast or to afflict her soul, maybe she's pregnant and she shouldn't be fasting, who knows? But her husband can say, no, I don't want you to fast. You know, he can, she's made an oath to afflict her soul. The husband can void that, right? But that's not talking about Yom Kippur. That's just talking about any time, right? Yeshayahu, Isaiah 58:3. Wherefore have we fasted, say they, and you see not? Wherefore have we afflicted our soul, and you take no knowledge? Behold, in the day of your fast, you find pleasure and exact all your labors. And then as Isaiah 58:5, is it such a fast that I have chosen? A day for a man to afflict his soul? Is it to bow down his head as a bulrush and to spread sackcloth and ashes under him? Will you call this a fast, an acceptable day to Yahuwah? And then in verse 10, Isaiah 58:10, he says, and if you draw out your soul to the hungry and satisfy the afflicted soul. See, he's equating hunger with satisfying the afflicted soul. Okay? So you can't act like afflicting your soul can be just about anything. It's obvious that when you feed the hungry, you are satisfying the afflicted soul because the person is hungry. They need food to eat. You satisfy the hungry and you satisfy the one who has afflicted his soul. So he says, if you draw out your soul to the hungry and satisfy the afflicted soul, then shall your light rise in obscurity, and your darkness shall be as the noonday. There you go. But beloved, Yahuwah does command us to fast on Yom Kippur. I don't care what any other ministry tries to tell you. I believe he's telling us to fast. Now, I'm not saying that we're doing this as a means to salvation. Obviously, it's not a means to salvation. Obviously, we're not atoning for our sin. We're not trying to earn anything. But if he tells us to do something, we should do it. Okay? Out of obedience. He says, if you love me, keep my commandments. Does he not? Okay, if our Messiah fasted for 40 days in the wilderness on our behalf, and he endured all that temptation on our behalf, is it such a hard thing that we should fast for 24 hours? Seriously, people, you can do this. There's no excuse not to do it. Okay? All right, that ends the teaching on, are we commanded to fast on Yom Kippur? Now, I'm willing to let you guys ask questions or to, just add your comments, any revelation that you might have received during this teaching, any new added insights, whatever you may have, I'm open to hearing it. I'd love to hear from you guys.
Okay, so in Zoom, you guys can unmute if you want. I see Lynn's at the top of the list, and then Michael. Oops, helps if I unmute you, Lynn. Go ahead, try again, Lynn.
Okay, hi.
Hi, we hear you. Go ahead.
I have an echo.
Oh, sorry about that.
All right, I'll try to get past it.
Yeah, thank you. Sorry.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So the two witnesses operate in the anointing of Moses and Elijah, because look at this in Revelation 11:6. Well, let's go to 11:4. First, it says, these are the two olive trees and the two candlesticks. Well, we know who the two olive trees are, right? Because in Jeremiah 11:16, go back to Jeremiah 11:16. We'll look at that real quick. This is the first time Yahuwah calls Israel an olive tree. He says, Yahuwah called your name an olive tree, fair and of goodly fruit, with the great noise of a tumult. He has kindled fire upon it, and the branches of it were broken. Kind of reminds me of what Paul said in Romans 11, right? So the first time Israel is called an olive tree is right there. And then in Zechariah chapter 4, the Malach comes to, Zechariah and talks with him, and, he says, what do you see? And he says, I've looked, and behold, a candlestick of all gold with a bowl upon the top of it, and his 7 lamps thereon, and 7 pipes to the 7 lamps which are upon the top of it. Now, I've got an illustration of this. Let me find it on my computer. Olive trees. Here it is. Oh, yeah. Okay, so this is a painting done by my favorite Messianic artist, Larissa Lando. She's got 2 olive trees here, the 2 pipes. They're taking the olive oil directly from the olive tree, and they're using it to fill the menorah. So this is what Zechariah was seeing, okay? And he says, so I answered and spoke to the Malach that talked with me, saying, what are these, my Adon, my master? And the Malach that talked with me answered and said, know you not what these be? And I said, no, my Adon. Then he answered and spoke unto me, saying, this is the word of Yahuwah unto Zerubbabel, saying, not by might nor by power, but by my spirit, says Yahuwah of hosts. So Zerubbabel was a governor that was, he came back to Jerusalem after the Babylonian captivity. They reestablished the kingdom of Judah again. And that right here in Zechariah 4:7, it says, who are you, O great mountain, before Zerubbabel? You shall become a plain, and he shall bring forth the headstone. That headstone is Messiah. Thereof, with shoutings, crying, grace, grace unto it. Moreover, the word of Yahuwah came unto me, saying, the hands of Zerubbabel have laid the foundation of this house. His hands shall also finish it. And you shall know that Yahuwah of hosts has sent me unto you. Now, Zerubbabel means out of Babylon. In other words, he came out of Babylon. He left Mystery Babylon. Just like most of us, we've come out of Mystery Babylon, Christianity, haven't we? We've left the pagan holidays and stuff like that. And then it says, for who has despised the day of small things? For they shall rejoice and shall see the plummet. The plummet is a measuring cord. They shall see the plummet in the hand of Zerubbabel with those 7. They are the eyes of Yahuwah, which run to and fro through the whole earth. Then answered I and said unto him, what are these 2 olive trees upon the right side of the candlestick, and upon the left side thereof? And I answered again and said unto him, what be these olive branches which through the 2 golden pipes empty the golden oil out of themselves? And he answered me and said, know you not what these be? And I said, no, my master. Then said he, these are the 2 anointed ones. Now the King James uses the word ones, but in the Hebrew, it's sons, bane. Remember, Yahuwah calls the whole nation of Israel my firstborn son. He tells Pharaoh in Exodus 4:22, he says, Israel's my firstborn son. But see, now they've become divided into 2 separate kingdoms after Solomon died. Now they're 2 houses of Israel. They're 2 separate nations. There's the northern kingdom of the 10 tribes of Ephraim, and then there's the southern kingdom of the 2 tribes of Benjamin and Judah. So they're 2 anointed sons. That's who these are. And then, of course, in Romans 11, Paul talks about it here. Shaul, he talks about the wild branches, and he talks about the natural branches. you know? He says, if some of the branches are broken off, you being a wild olive tree were grafted in among them. The wild olive tree would be those from the nations, the Gentile nations. And he says, and with them partake of the root and the fatness of the olive tree. He says, boast not against the branches, but if you boast, you bear not the root, but the root bears you. Will you say then the branches were broken off that I might be grafted in? This is the haughty attitude I see today in the Hebraic roots community. Oh, those Jews, they're all the synagogue of Satan. It's too late for them, those Christ killers. We're the new Israel now. And that's the attitude that they have. And what is Paul saying? He says, no, don't do that. Don't boast. He says, because of unbelief, they were broken off and you stand by faith. But he says, do not be high-minded, but fear. Because if Elohim did not spare the natural branches, take heed lest he also spare not you. So in other words, he says that if they also, meaning the Jews, the Yehudim, if they abide not still in unbelief, they shall be grafted in. For Elohim is able to graft them in again. Okay, so these Hebrew roots people, boasting against Judah and saying they're all the fake Jews, they're all the synagogue of Satan, you better watch out because you might lose your salvation over that. I'm being dead serious. I'm being totally serious. You say something evil against his people, against his kingdom, he's going to cut you down. Don't be high-minded. I'm not saying that to you, Lynn. I'm speaking to the general people out there, right? Okay, Revelation 11. Now, the two olive trees, it's apparent who they are. They're the two houses of Israel. And then, I forgot, Ezekiel 37. Ezekiel 37. Okay. Yeah, so what did you want to... I'm just finishing up with Lynn, so I'll answer your question about the painting in a minute, Michael. So when you go to Ezekiel 37, there's the same thing again. It says, moreover, you son of man, take you one stick. Now, this word stick is the Hebrew word etz, which means a tree. Let's go there right now. Let's look at the word, take you one stick. It's a tree. Look, etz. 6086, a tree, okay? A stick. You see, Yahushua died on two trees, not just one tree, not just a wooden stake. He carried the crossbeam across his shoulder, and he carried it to the place of the skull where the other stick was already standing there, okay?
And two sticks much more represents a tree than a single pole.
Right, exactly.
Because that doesn't look like a tree. That looks like... It looks like a giant representation of a blade of grass or something.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So he says, take you one tree and write upon it for Yehuda and for the children of Israel, his companions. Remember, Leah and Rachel, the two sisters, had companions. Leah's companion was her handmaiden Zilpah. And Rachel's companion was her handmaiden Bilhah. Okay? So he's saying, write upon the one tree for Yehuda and for the children of Israel, his companions. Then take another stick or another tree and write upon it for Yehusaph, the stick of Ephraim, and for all the house of Israel, his companions. So you've got four groups here. You got two olive trees, and each of these olive trees has a companion, a Gentile companion who's been grafted in. Okay, so now we go to Revelation 1, verse 20. Go to Revelation 1:20, and what do we have? Messiah, Yahushua, says, I will tell you the mystery of I will tell you the mystery of the 7 stars which you saw in my right hand. Okay. The mystery of the 7 stars which you saw in my right hand, and the 7 golden candlesticks. The 7 stars are the Malachim, the angels of the 7 assemblies, and the 7 candlesticks which you saw are the 7 assemblies. Well, out of 7, only 2 of them that he did not rebuke. 2 of them, Smyrna and Philadelphia. What does he say to Smyrna? He compares them to Yehudim. The only 2 congregations that he compares to the Yehudim are Smyrna and Philadelphia. He says to Smyrna, he says, I know your works. He's commending them that they have good works. They're obedient to the Torah. I know your tribulation and your poverty, but you are rich. And then he says, and I know the blasphemy of them which say they are Yehudim, and they are not, but are of the synagogue of Satan. Now, he's not talking about all Jews, but a lot of Christians and Hebrew roots people, as soon as they see the word Jew, they say, oh, it's a bad word, Jew. Jew means you're the synagogue of Satan. I'm so tired of that, I can't even tell you. But see, what he's doing is he's telling them, you are behaving like a true Yehudi, okay? Because your heart is circumcised. What did Paul the Apostle Shaul say in Romans chapter 2? He says, but he is a Yehudi, which is one inwardly, and circumcision is that of the heart, in the spirit and not in the letter, whose praise is not of men, but of Elohim. So people act like, oh, I don't want to be associated with that word Jew. Oh my gosh, no, I'm a Hebrew. I'm not a Jew. Everybody acts like Jew is such a bad word. Everybody's like, oh, I'm not a Jew. It's like, what is wrong with you? You don't want to belong to the same tribe as your Messiah? What is wrong with you? He's the Lion of the tribe of Yehuda, and you don't want to get married to him and join his tribe? I mean, these people are crazy. They've gotten into all this replacement theology, just like Constantine. Sorry, I'm preaching. I get so worked up because I get so tired of the ignorance that I see in this, movement.
And no one differentiates. I mean, I know what some of these people mean. Some of these people mean, Judaism, right? They don't. So when you say I don't want to be a Jew or whatever, they're thinking Judaism, meaning denying Messiah. But that's just ignorant. There's too much variation in the definition of Jew.
Exactly.
So you better be very clear what you say, because there is what you're saying. There's the lineage of Yehuda, the person who became, the Lion of Judah, which is our Messiah is. Mm-hmm. And then there's the modern religion of being Jewish, right. Judaism. And then there's just people who say that about Israel in general, like, oh, you're a Jew. You're an Israeli, or you're from Israeli Hebrew background.
People
and that's
in this movement are like, I don't want to call myself a Jew. I'm a Hebrew. I'm like, okay, you want to go back and be like Abraham? Good for you. You want to be a Hebrew, but what does it mean to be a Yehudi? It means you're married. You're engaged to be married to the Lion of the tribe of Judah, Yehuda. You're going to be joining his tribe. You're going to be taking on his name. I mean, when a woman gets married to a husband, doesn't she join his tribe?
The clue is, if they're saying it with an attitude, they probably mean it the way you think they mean it, right?
Yeah.
Because otherwise, you're not going to have an attitude about it. You're going to be more clear in what you really mean, or you're going to ask someone to make clarify. So Michael says Phariseeism or legalism, exactly.
Yeah, exactly. So in Revelation chapter 2:9, he compares Smyrna to the ones that say that they are Yehudim, but they are the synagogue of Satan. Now, let me be clear. There could be people who ethnically are really Jews. Like, let's say, for instance, George Soros. Let's say, Jeffrey Epstein. Let's just say Marina Abramovich, Steven Spielberg, all these people that are in Hollywood. What's that other guy that went to jail for all the... Harvey Weinstein, right? These people are ethnically Jewish. They were raised in Judaism, but they're Satanists. A lot of Jews, Yehudim, are bitter because of the Holocaust. They are bitter because of the way Christians have treated them in the nations over the last 2,000 years. So now they've got this attitude of, it's our turn. We're going to get even. We're going to kill all the Christians. We're sick and tired of being the brunt of everybody's jokes. We're sick and tired of everybody, killing on the Jews and hating on the Jews. So we're going to get even. So a lot of you Jews are bitter. Where was Elohim in the Holocaust? Why did he let that happen to us? Why did he let that happen to our families? So they're bitter. They've turned their backs on Yahuwah, and now they worship the devil. Okay, now they might genuinely be ethnically Jews, but see, because they are not allowing their hearts to be circumcised, because they haven't repented, because they're not turning to Messiah Yahushua and to his Torah, in the end, they're not going to be counted as Jews or Yehudim. Doesn't matter if they're ethnically Jewish. It doesn't matter even if they have the DNA of the tribe of Judah. They might even have that going for them. But if they reject the truth, if they reject the Torah and they worship the devil, then they're the synagogue of Satan. Okay? But it's not about bloodline identity. It's about faith in Messiah. It's about having your heart circumcised. So these people from Smyrna, they, I believe, are the Jewish people that haven't accepted him yet. But Yahuwah has given them a mark in the forehead. Ezekiel chapter 9 says he puts a mark in their forehead ahead of time. The Aleph Tav, he puts in their forehead. And then also in Revelation 7, he puts a mark in their forehead. He seals them for the day of redemption. And those from Smyrna have to suffer tribulation for 10 more days beyond what Philadelphia has to suffer. So I believe that Smyrna represents the 5 foolish virgins. Okay, the 5 foolish virgins had good works. They're virgins because they've left Mother Harlot. They're not defiled by that woman Jezebel. They're not defiled by the Mother Harlot. They're Torah observant. That's why they're called virgins. And there's 5 of them because they keep the 5 books of Moses. 5 represents the books of Moses. So they keep the Torah. They're obedient to the Torah. They're undefiled by the mother harlot. But there's one thing missing. They don't have the oil because they haven't accepted Yahushua, Messiah, yet. So they have to go through the 10 days of awe between the Feast of Trumpets and the Day of Atonement. During those 10 days, they're going to realize the other bride, the other half of the bride, went into the marriage and the door was shut and they missed their day of visitation. And guess what? The foolish virgins were told to go buy the oil. What does it say right here? Matthew 25. Okay. They asked the foolish virgins asked the wise virgins, give us some of your oil. And they said, no, then we won't have enough oil. They said, go buy oil for yourself. Okay. And while they were out buying the oil, the bridegroom came and the door was shut. Okay. Trying to find the exact passage where it says when the bridegroom came, the door was shut. Let's see. Where is it? Oh, that's the talents. I'm looking at the wrong thing. No wonder. Okay. So the wise virgins said, go buy your own oil. Go to them that sell and buy for yourselves. And while they went to buy, the bridegroom came, and they that were ready went in with him to the marriage, and the door was shut. Afterward came also the other virgins, saying, Master, Master, open to us. But he answered and said, Verily, I say unto you, I know you not. Now, that's not the same thing as I never knew you, okay? Because you have to understand, when he separates the sheep from the goats, the ones that say, oh, Master, Master, didn't we do all these wonderful works in your name? And he's going to say, depart from me, I never knew you, you worker of iniquity. That word iniquity in the Greek is, lawlessness. He says, you that worked lawlessness, depart from me. I never knew you. So the ones that he says, I never knew you, are the ones that, they say that they're Christians. They say they believe in Jesus and all this, but they say, oh, the law's been done away with. It's been nailed to the cross. We don't have to keep those Old Testament laws anymore. That's just a bunch of bondage. So when he says, depart from me, I never knew you, that's the kind of people he's talking about. But see, this is different. These foolish virgins, they are obedient to the Torah, but they're missing the oil because they don't know Messiah yet. They don't know him by name. Okay. Now, what does it say in Song of Solomon? 1:3 tells us, because of the savor of your good ointments, your name is as ointment poured forth. Therefore, do the virgins love you. And then it says, draw me. We will run after you. The king has brought me into his chamber. That word in Hebrew is huppah. It's a wedding huppah. He has brought me into his chambers. We will be glad and rejoice in you. We will remember your love more than wine. The upright love you. And he's talking about the daughters of Jerusalem. Okay, so he's telling them the oil is the name. And see, this is why Philadelphia has the open door that no man can shut. So in Revelation 3:9, he compares them to Jews also. So the only two congregations that get compared to the Yehudim, the Jews, is Smyrna and Philadelphia, because both Smyrna and Philadelphia are Torah observant. They have both left the mother harlot. They have both, they're both Torah observant. 5 of them are wise. 5 of them are foolish. Why 5? Because 5 means they're obeying the 5 books of Moses. But the only difference is that Smyrna doesn't know him intimately. They don't know his name yet. They haven't figured out who it is yet. But see, during those 10 days of awe, they're going to realize we missed it. These virgins that are missing, they're gone. They knew him as Yahushua. And they're going to go, oh, it was him. We didn't know it was him. We're still waiting for the Messiah to come for the first time. But these virgins that were calling him by the name Yahushua, they're ready to go in. They went into the marriage ahead of us, and they're going to get right. They're going to figure out his name. And when the Messiah comes and they're standing at the Mount of Olives, they're going to be ready for him. They're going to be waiting for him. And he says to Philadelphia, you have kept my word. And he says, I will keep you from the hour of temptation, which shall come upon all the world to try them that dwell upon the earth. Now, Christians think this is talking about a pre-tribulation rapture. No, it's not. This is post-tribulation, after the 1,260 days of the ministry of the 2 witnesses is finished. But there's 10 days of wrath that follows. Okay, so they're going to go in before the wrath begins. They're going to be in heaven in the chuppah with the bridegroom. They're not going to be down here on earth suffering the wrath. But the ones from Smyrna, they are going to be killed. He says, fear none of these things which you shall suffer. Behold, the devil shall cast some of you into prison, that you may be tried, and you shall have tribulation 10 days. Be you faithful unto death, and I will give you the crown of life. So I believe when Messiah comes back, they are going to be resurrected, but I don't think they're going to get incorruptible bodies. I believe they're going to be resurrected the same way that Lazarus was resurrected. He just came back into his natural finite existence, and he lived out the remainder of his days. I don't believe, because, see, the whole purpose of the quote-unquote rapture or harpazo, the whole purpose of it is that when the bride gets taken up to heaven, we're going to get a new resurrected body. We're going to get a heavenly body. And so that's the difference between Smyrna and Philadelphia. Philadelphia goes to heaven to get a heavenly body, and she comes back as the army of Messiah, and she's going to be indestructible. We can't be killed. Once we have this indestructible body, we're going to be riding on white horses, fighting against the beast and his army is, and all those AIs, all those robots, all those Terminator robots. We're going to just be able to destroy them with no problem. But Smyrna has to suffer an extra 10 days. Yeah. So, so does that make sense, Lynn? Okay.
Was that more than you anticipated, Lynn?
I know. I'm sorry.
It always is.
I just get so like excited because I just can't wait for this. I just can't wait for this to happen for us. Yep. Exactly. Michael, I'm sorry. What was your question, brother? You still there? Okay. No, go right ahead. I love questions. I love questions. I love Midrash. Right. Yes. Yes. Yeah, let me go there. It's Zechariah. Let me find it. 4.
Hey, while you're looking, for anyone who has a question, you do have to understand that asking Maria a question is like the clown pulling a single handkerchief out of his pocket, and it just keeps coming and coming.
Somebody once said it's like a fire hose. I'm sorry. Okay. It said, here it is, Zerubbabel, it's descended of, that is from Babylon, born there, right? But we know they came out of the Babylonian captivity. They came back into the land and established it. So let me look it up in the Strong's, 2216. Sometimes the Strong's gives a little bit more than what, the eSword gives, Strong's. What did I say? It's 2216, right? Okay. So 2216. So yeah, it says descended from Babylon, born there, but this 2 root words 2215, to flow away, zarab, and then the other word 894 is Babel. Okay, confusion. So yeah, to flow away. In other words, to come out of her. Come out of her, my people, right? So, yeah. Mm-hmm. Yes. Right, exactly. That's right. Mm-hmm. 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 Right, exactly. And I wrote this blog back in 2012. It's called The Father and the Son Seen in Judah, the Kinsman Redeemer, because I got the revelation that the Father and the Son are both from Judah. And you know, and people go, what are you talking about? Because see, think about it. You take the dalet out of the word Yehuda, okay? Because Judah is spelled this way: Yod, Hey, Wa, Dalet, Hey. Okay, without the vowels in there. That's how you spell Yehuda. Yod, Hey, Wa, Dalet, Hey. Okay. Now, some people they use the vav, right? They use the v. Well, how do we say Judah? Do we say Yehuvda? Of course we don't say Yehuvda. So if we don't say Yehuvda, then it can't be a v. Because if it was a v, we would all be pronouncing the name Judah as Yehuvda. So it's not Yehuvda. It's a wa, it's a W. But so, you know, it's the Father's name, but there's that one extra letter in there, the dalet, the door, means the door. So who is the door to the Father? We know it's Yahushua. He says, I am the door to the sheep. So in this name, Yahudah, we see both the Father and the Son. They are together. The Father and the Son are encompassed in this name. Yahudah is the name Judah. In that name is both the Father and the Son. So Yahuwah gave me that revelation. He showed it to me how in, Zechariah 6:11, there's the Father whose name is Yahuzedek. Now, of course, the way they spell it is kind of, anglicized. But how would we spell Yahuzedek means the Father's righteous. And then his son's name is Yahushua, which means Yahuwah is our salvation. So you got the Father and the Son, both of them priests in the temple, working in tandem with each other. Okay, and they say, take silver and gold and make crowns and set it upon the head of Yahushua. Now, modern Hebrew, they use the modern vowel points, Yahoshua. But we know those vowel points are not Yehoshua because here's why. Let's look at the name Eliyahu, Elijah, right? Eliyahu. Now, if the Father's name is on the end of the name Eliyahu, but now you put the vowel points Yeho in there, now what does that do to the name Eliyahu? It's Eliahov now. We know that's not how you say Elijah. It's not Eliahov. It's Eliyahu. So if the Father's name is Yahu on the end of names, it has to be Yahu at the beginning of names as well. But you see, the Masoretes, they were these scribes in the 10th century. They were following the Talmudic ban on the divine name, which out after the Babylonian captivity, the Jewish people took it upon themselves to put a ban on the divine name. They're like, we don't want these goyim pronouncing his name. They're defiling his name. They're desecrating his name. And they had a point, but it wasn't their job to do that. It wasn't. They took it upon themselves. They thought they were protecting his name. But see, they made his name be forgotten. And Scripture says, you have caused my people to forget my name for Baal. Forget my name for Baal. Well, Baal just means Lord. Forget my name, Baal. So, Jeremiah, he says, you've caused my people to forget my name by their dreams, which they tell every man to his neighbor, as their fathers have forgotten my name for Baal. So they might have thought they were doing something righteous by protecting the name, but they caused the people to forget the name in place, and they replaced his proper name with Lord, which means Baal. So anyway, my point is that you see both the Father and the Son together in this passage. This is a prophetic picture of the Father, who is, and the Son together working in tandem as priests in the temple, and the one who gets all the crowns on his head is Joshua, So he showed me the Father and the Son are both of them are Melchizedek, both of them. See, the Father and the Son are encompassed in this name Judah. That both of them are the kinsman redeemer. And here's the proof. Here we got, this is a cartoon image of Judah, the patriarch Judah, who was the fourth son of Leah and Jacob. And there is his daughter-in-law, Tamar. She was married to Judah's first son, and he died, and she was childless. Then his brother Onan marries her. He doesn't give her a son. He's supposed to do the duty of a kinsman redeemer and impregnate her to build up a name for his dead brother, but he refused to do it. He pulled out and spilled his seed, and Yahuwah was so angry, he slew him. So now when Judah has a third son named Shelah, and he says, when Shelah is old enough, I'll send him to you. But when Shelah gets old enough, he doesn't send him. So now Tamar hears this. She finds out Judah's wife died. She finds out that Shelah is old enough and he doesn't send him. So what does she do? She dresses up like a harlot and makes him think she's a harlot. And, she tricks him into going into her, and he impregnates her with twins. And then 3 months later, he finds out, he gets the rumor, your daughter-in-law Tamar is pregnant by harlotry. And he says, bring her forth and let her be burned. Well, guess what? She acted wisely, because what she did was she said, I want your, and I share this in this teaching because it's so deep and it's so rich. But she tells Judah, I want your staff, because he says, I'm going to send you the kid of a goat. Well, the kid of the goat is a pledge. It has to do with Yom Kippur typology. He tells her, I'm going to send you the kid of a goat. And she says, well, what will you give me in the meantime until you send the goat? And he's like, well, what do you want? What shall I give you? And she says, I want your staff, and I want your bracelets. And I forget what the other thing was. Let me find it here. She says, I want your staff, your bracelets, and your signet ring. That's it. So the signet ring has to do with the family name, signature, right? The family monogram was on the ring. You would stamp something, and it would leave behind the family signature, right? So he says, I will send you a kid of the goat from the flock. And she said, what will you pledge me until you send it? See, this is all Yom Kippur typology. Tamar is asking for a pledge or an oath. They mean the same thing, a pledge or an oath from Judah. Because, see, Melchizedek who sprang out of Judah is the one who is installed with an oath. So Judah then offers her the kid of a goat, which would be sent, just like the scapegoat was sent, right? Similarly, our Messiah, who's from the tribe of Judah, was going to become that sent goat to redeem Israel. And he said, what pledge shall I give you? And she said, your signet, that means your name, right? And your bracelets, that means your atonement, the blood atonement. I'll explain that in a minute. And your staff that is in your hand. And he gave it to her and came in unto her, and she conceived by him. So the Hebrew word for signet is kotam, and it means the name. Okay, the seal. Okay, and then the Hebrew word for bracelet is patil, and it means a cord or a thread. Remember the twin who stuck his hand out first, and the midwife puts the scarlet cord on his wrist? Well, nowadays the Hollywood Kabbalists, they wear the red scarlet cord around their bracelet, around their hand, because they're trying to imitate the Bible, but they're worshiping the devil. They're twisting the faith of the scriptures, and they're following Kabbalah and all this stuff, and they wear the red cord around their wrist, just like Tucker Carlson does. But there's something biblical to this. So she asked for the bracelet, the scarlet cord, which has to do with the atonement. And she asks for his staff, which means the branch or the tribe. Because see, what they did was they would carve into this branch
The lineage.
the lineage of their lineage, like the names of all the people in their clan. So basically what she's saying is, I want your name, I want to belong to your tribe, and I want your blood atonement. So what you have is, you have Tamar. She represents the 10 northern tribes that were divorced, widowed. And so what happens is that Judah promises to send his son, but see, he's afraid that his third son's going to die now, so he doesn't send him. So what happens is the father himself becomes the kinsman redeemer. So do you see that? The father, he promises to send his son, but the father himself becomes the kinsman redeemer for Tamar. And see, she gives birth to the twins, and the twin that has the scarlet cord, he's the twin that is named, the one twin that caused the breach, the midwife said, he caused the breach. His name is Peretz, which means division, someone that causes a breach or a divide, right? But the twin that came out first is Zerach, which means rising of light. It actually means to be resurrected. So in other words, this is a picture of the twin goats for Yom Kippur. The twin that caused the breach is the kingdom of Judah, because it was King Solomon, who was from the tribe of Judah. He married all these wives, 1,000 of them, built heathen temples for them, taxed the people so heavily. They said, we're sick and tired of this. And they got up and left the kingdom of Judah, and they went and followed Jeroboam, because Jeroboam wasn't taxing them heavily. But Solomon's son, King Rehoboam, he was taxing them heavily. They said, look, we'll serve you on one condition. You lighten the taxes. And he wouldn't. Instead, he said, I'm going to make your taxes even heavier than my father did. So that caused them to get up and go. So there was 2 different kingdoms after that. So it was Judah who caused the breach, right? Now, Shimon Peres, who's the prime minister of Israel in 1993, handed over the east city of Old Jerusalem to Pope John Paul II. Peretz, causing the breach. His name, Perez, actually means to cause a division, to divide, to cause the breach. So you see, Judah has been the one that's constantly causing the divide, the breach. And then the other twin, who represents the 10 northern tribes, Messiah, came for both of them. So he had to step into the role of Judah, because Judah wasn't doing what they were supposed to do. So he had to step into the role of Judah and say, you're supposed to be the firstborn, but you're not doing what the firstborn is supposed to do. Now I have to step in and become you. I have to become Judah, because you're not doing what Judah is supposed to do. You're supposed to bring the other 10 lost tribes back into the fold, and you're not doing it. So now I got to come and become you. I got to become Judah. Yeah.
You have other questions, Michael?
Any other questions?
Oh, okay.
Yeah, but so does the whole thing with the name make sense, that like Judah, as I started to think about this, I was like, everybody thinks that Judah is only the earthly son of Leah and Jacob. But no, Judah is pre-existed. I mean, all 12 tribes pre-existed. Yahudim, yeah. And see, when people hear that, they think that means join Judaism. That's not what he's talking about. When he says salvation is of the Yahudim, he means himself, because the priesthood from the sons of Levi, they eventually die they eventually die. And so they can't continue to be the high priest. But the high priest, who has an endless life, who never dies, he is the one who's been installed with an oath, and he sprang out of Judah. So when he told the woman at the well, salvation is of the Yehudim, or the Jews, he's referring to himself.
Well, let's not forget the Pharisees at the time, the Pharisees and the Sadducees. I mean, there were some good ones, right? But by and large, they were threatened by the idea of a Messiah, unless they were going to come and be this magnificent king that nobody would question.
Mm-hmm.
You know, they wanted a crazy, dynamic, you know, going to conquer all their enemies, kind of do good deeds for us. Yeah, king. Mm-hmm. And if they weren't going to have that, anything else, they felt like it was less than what was promised, and they weren't going to let anybody else horn in on their territory.
Right.
You know, they got a thing going. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Well, I mean, if you don't have any more questions, I might go ahead and cover the whole stuff that's happened recently in the news with Trump, but I'm just waiting to see if there's anybody else that has any further.
What did you click? Turn off your speakers, please.
Okay. So do you have any more questions, or does anybody else have any more questions? Right. The born. Yeah. Yeah. Yes. Right. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That's right. Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah. But of course, at the end of the millennium, the new heaven and the new earth comes down. This will be in the 8th millennium, right? And it says, I, John, saw the holy city, New Jerusalem, coming down from Elohim out of heaven, prepared as a bride for her husband. So I believe at that point, all of us will be transformed into this great city called the New Jerusalem. So we're no longer going to be these individuals. We're going to become like, I don't know, like this, it says we're going to be the living stones. You know how the Bible talks about that we're these lively stones. We're going to be we're going to actually be the New Jerusalem. We're going to make up the tabernacle, you know. And then, of course, the temple shall be the Lamb himself shall be the temple. It says right here, and I saw no temple therein, for Yahuwah Almighty and the Lamb are the temple. So that means there's going to be a temple functioning all through the millennium. A lot of Christians and even some Hebrew roots people go, there's not going to be a temple in the millennium. I'm like, well, what are we going to do? Just sitting on clouds and playing harps like little cherubs? Like, I mean, yeah. And when you say that, they get all bent out of shape. What do we need sacrifices for? I'm like, so we can eat. We're going to have barbecue with him. We're going to have lamb and beef barbecue.
Yeah, again, those performing the services for those who are offering the offerings, that's it was sacrifices. I mean, I'm speaking to preaching to the choir here, but they weren't just for sin, right?
Yeah.
So, if you were doing your offering from your the increase of your flock for the year, your produce, I mean, you gave that and it was split up and cooked, and yeah, that's how the priesthood survived.
Yeah.
During the time when they weren't at home, because they didn't live there 24/7. They, did 2-week cycles.
Yeah, I mean, the only time that they did a sacrifice for atonement was once per year on Yom Kippur. The other sacrifices had different purposes, different meanings, and we're going to be learning all that stuff in the millennium. He's going to teach us what all of these different sacrifices mean and how it all pointed to him, all of it, you know.
So in lieu of doing a second topic, we do have some more questions now. So SR, he's joined before, in the chat says, I'm going to read all of his comments right now, and then you can sort of bundle them into one answer.
Okay.
I already said, he asked about the new heaven and new earth. Is it before or after the millennium? I said after. Then, yeah, he said New Jerusalem. He said what he meant, and I said after. And then he says, where, sorry, wrong question. How is the Messiah reigning from, and then he said, what temple? And then is the temple not the building, but Yahushua?
Are you talking about in the millennium? You mean after?
Yeah, I think during the millennium.
During the millennium.
I would specify both, during and then the new
right.
Jerusalem.
So in Ezekiel, like chapter 40 through 48, let me find it. Ezekiel, where are we? Ezekiel 40 through 48. It talks about the vision of the new temple, and, I would just strongly recommend going through wherever it talks about the prince, shall offer, sacrifice and oblations, talks about the outer court, the north gate, the south gate, the east gate to the outer court, so that there's definitely going to be a temple during the millennium. But I believe that so when he talks about the tabernacle of David was like a sort of like the tent in the wilderness that Moses erected, and basically it was a temporary structure. So it says that when Messiah returns, he's going to rebuild the tabernacle of David that has fallen down. So I believe that David's tabernacle is going to be this kind of temporary structure while they're building the permanent one, the Ezekiel one. So that's just my own, thought there, right? So it says in Isaiah 16:5, and in mercy shall the throne be established, and he shall sit upon it in truth in the tabernacle of David, judging and seeking judgment and hasting righteousness. And then also in Amos 9:11, in that day will I raise up the tabernacle of David that is fallen, and close up the breaches thereof, and I will raise up his ruins, and I will build it as in the days of old. And then also in Acts 15:16, after this I will return and will build again the tabernacle of David, which is fallen down, and I will build again the ruins thereof, and I will set it up. So, yeah, I believe that's going to be the first thing he does when he returns, and then the construction for the Ezekiel temple will begin. So, yeah.
And let's not forget, there has to be a temple before he returns, at least enough to have...
the false Messiah.
Yeah, the false Messiah stand up and...
But I think that one's going to get destroyed because Jerusalem's going to be on fire, right?
It's very possible. And why would he resurrect,
right?
To use that term, rebuild the tabernacle of David? That was a temporary shelter if they just finished building a new stone temple.
Right.
Which clearly they do.
Yeah, and it says right here in 2 Peter 3:10, but the day of Yahuwah will come as a thief in the night, in which the heavens shall pass away with a great noise, and the elements shall melt with fervent heat. The earth also and the works that are therein shall be burned up. Now, I believe the reason that he's going to have to do this is because of all this AI. AI is becoming so advanced that now these robots are sentient, meaning they're self-aware. They'll be able to almost procreate and build other robots, like robots building other robots. And they're going to be able to kill off all the humans, just like the Terminator movies. And it's totally demonic. It's totally demonically inspired. Obviously, fallen angels are behind the whole thing. But they've built up this network in the sky. Just like in the Terminator movies, they call it Skynet. President Trump started this satellite surveillance, a dome over the earth. This is what I believe the whole flat earth narrative is about, trying to condition us for this satellite dome over the earth. The whole thing is a big fat lie about the flat earth. They want us to think we're living under the Nephilim dome, that we're under their satellites and we're under their control. I'm telling you, this is so demonic. This is why the heavens are going to be burned up. He's going to have to destroy all these satellites.
So can you clarify that you think the Ezekiel temple is the one that Messiah rebuilds after the second coming, that's going to be
Yes.
operating during the millennium?
Yes, I
but
do.
But it is not the temple that comes down after he destroys the beast.
Right.
The Hasatan.
Well, in
from the pit.
Revelation, there is no, in Revelation 21, this is the 8th millennium. This is after the 1,000 years are finished. Because in the previous chapter, it says that Satan is released out of the bottomless pit after the 1,000 years, right?
And then we become the New Jerusalem with the lively stones.
Right.
That comes down.
Right. So in Revelation 20, it talks about that Satan is released out of the bottomless pit. Where is it? Yeah. And when the 1,000 years are expired, Satan shall be loosed out of his prison and shall go out to deceive the nations which are in the four quarters of the earth, Gog and Magog, to gather them together to battle. So there's going to be another war at the end of the millennium. There's going to be one war, the Battle of Armageddon. When Messiah returns, there's going to be another one at the end. And then, so that's when the new heaven and the new earth comes down, and there's going to be the new Jerusalem, which is going to replace the earthly Jerusalem. And then right down here, it says in verse 22, I saw no temple therein, for Yahuwah Almighty and the Lamb are the temple. So we're not going to have this brick and mortar structure anymore called a temple. It's Messiah himself and the Father, that they are the temple. It's going to be Yahuwah and the Lamb. The Lamb is a representation of Messiah, as the sacrificial lamb, but he's also going to be there as the Father and the Son together, intertwined as one, because we're only going to see one sitting on the throne. So there's not going to be a brick and mortar temple. It's going to be Yahuwah himself as the temple. And we, the bride, we're going to be the city, not the temple. We're going to be like the city, the New Jerusalem is going to be like the bride, It's hard to imagine that we're going to be like stones.
Yeah, I think it's,
it's a metaphor.
Yeah, it's a metaphor. We're not going to be stuck in like, I wish I could go beyond my own wall.
Yeah, yeah. It's metaphor. It's hard to imagine. But we're going to be like living stones, jewels, gemstones,
Yeah, because how could you also have streets of gold?
Yeah.
And yet you've got where the pavement is sapphire, and yet you can sort of see through some of this, and it's a grand picture.
It's going to be so beyond our wildest dreams that I don't even know how to describe it.
Yep, I agree. He says, so the water going from the throne will not be happening until after the millennium. That's correct.
Yep.
That is a picture of the new Jerusalem have come down in the 8th millennium.
Yep. I actually had a dream about this one time. This was back in I think 2013. I was in, the New Jerusalem, and where's the one where it talks about the leaves of the trees are for the healing? Yeah, here it is. I was in the New Jerusalem, and I was walking along on the streets of gold, and I saw these pears on these trees. The pears were gold, like these golden pears. And I remember in the dream, I looked at the pear and thought, I'd like to eat one. And I didn't even have to pick it. The pear picked itself, just flew over to me and landed in my hand. It was so crazy. But I had just a glimpse of it. The dream, I don't remember a whole lot of it. But I just remember thinking, I didn't see any of my family members, and I was worried and thought, where are they? How come they didn't make it? And I don't know if I just didn't see them for whatever reason, but I knew that I had this incredible burden to start really praying a lot for my family, because I didn't know anybody there. I was the only one that from my family that I could see,
Right. A lot earlier when you were showing a picture of the serpent and Hava, ready to pick that, what we would call the apple. I know it's not an apple. But I was thinking, Yahuwah made the serpent, and all flesh, are considered all flesh is made of the earth, right?
Dirt, yeah.
Not just man. So we have the scriptures that refers to us as clay pots. Our bodies are kind of like a bag of flour, a bag of dirt. I mean, that's just kind of a mental picture. Not that the Bible says that per se, but we're put on clothes and stuff. Anyway, so I was thinking about this, and I was thinking, I bet you that the snake, because that represents Hasatan, was the first Hoover.
What's a Hoover?
Vacuum cleaner.
I thought it was some kind of animal.
Because the snake was literally like eating dirt. He's like a dirt bag.
Oh my gosh.
Right? But bump.